McDermott. Melendez. Miller. I know. Merritt. Monahan. Newsom. Oliver. Pasqualini. Perry. Powers. Pacino. Quinn. Richards. Rogers. Stanford. Streeter. Irma. Streeter James. Strode. Wagner. Washington. Wells. Whitehouse. Whitney. Eben.
Here.
And Fleming. That would be 27.
27, we have a quorum, thank you. And I just want to welcome our newest RTM member from District 7, Representative Jen Fleming. Thank you. What?
She was elected this evening.
And she was elected hot off the press this evening. So that's great. And I also wanted to note that we had received notices from Representative McDermott, Whitney, Massett, Marshall, Strode, and Hanscom that they would not be at the meeting, and I believe Representative Richards either cannot be at it or is going to be late. She's giving a final exam. So there you go. All right. So I would ask you all to have a moment of silence, and then we'll salute the flag. Representative Jim Streeter, would you lead us in the pledge, please? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. So another election yesterday. We have the minutes as our first order of business. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from our November 14th meeting? Monahan, and seconded by Pasqualini. Is there any discussion on the minutes? I actually had some. I noted that under other items that Representative Katowski's presentation on some of the parks and rec facilities in her neighborhood was missing, and so I would just ask for that recognition of that presentation, and also that I had asked the manager about his direction for the 2020 budget season, so I would also like that noted if that's possible. Seeing no other comments, and I know Representative Richards had emailed a few small typos. So seeing no other comments, all in favor? Say aye. Sorry. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Yep. Thanks. All right, so at this point, is there anyone? I'll just read this. No. This is a portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less. Citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. Myself or members through me shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by me or by the town manager, and citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state names and addresses. We do not have anyone on our list, but if there are any folks in the audience who wish to speak, that would be terrific. No? All right, so the next item is reception of communications, and I wanted to start this section off, and I know a number of you have communications, but the election for the charter revision in November sparked a lot of kind of communications from residents of Groton to us, and also from members of this body to each other, kind of flying across, and I received kind of some of these communications that we actually had a citizens petition at our last meeting from Ian Thomas, I believe, who said that we should form an outreach committee. And so what I'm doing under Rule 6.31 is I'm going to form a special committee. It's not meant to be permanent. It's going to be temporary. It's going to be an outreach committee. And what I would like that committee to do is to explore ways in a coordinated fashion, because what I really would prefer not is for individual members to kind of engage with what they think is outreach on their own. I'd rather have our body discuss it in a coordinated fashion and come up with a way to do this that's most effective and most efficient, and most importantly, that meets FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requirements. And so I'm asking this new body to work closely with the town clerk to make sure whatever is done will meet any kind of reporting and noticing and requirements. And I am happy to put anyone who wants to be on this committee on it. All you have to do is email me, okay? So I'm asking for folks to email me, and I will have to balance it with a minority-majority representation, but I think I can make it work with anyone who wants to be on it. So that's my first item. And my second item is there was also communication that I received, again, from members of this body, that more information on the budget was desirable on a monthly basis, more than was given by the manager in his financial report and monthly briefing. And so I'm going to ask the Finance Committee to take this on and meet and try to come up with a monthly briefing for this body, and to work closely with the manager, Bert, to get that information. And I also am asking the members of this body, if you have, and you're not on Finance Committee, because many of the folks who told me this were not, if you have specific items you would like encapsulated in that report, please let me know, and I will pass that on to Representative Washington so she can have that at their meeting when they discuss the format of this. But there just was a desire to have more information on expenditures on a more closely grained basis than kind of when we gear up for budget season. So I'm not asking, it doesn't necessarily have to be monthly, but just a more frequent reporting on expenditures and the status of the budget. So those are my two announcements. And I know a number of you also have items, communications to relay. So Representative Mello Miller, I think you had your hand raised. Oh, you didn't know? You want me to go up? Or no? You can, whichever you prefer. I thought I saw you have it before raised, that's why I said that.
So I received this correspondence, and I apologize for mispronouncing the last name, and if someone could help me out with this. It's from Carl Peruzzati? Peruzzati. So you know him. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. So I received this email from him, and I was asked to read it. I apologize, and this will also be forwarded on to the entire RTM, but he unfortunately could not be here tonight, so he wanted me to read this to you, or to the RTM. Dear RTM representatives, 15 years ago, and I'm sorry, should I give his address or no? No, doesn't matter, okay.
We're all gonna get it.
All right,
You
15 years
give
ago, I
it if you
purchased
want.
property in No Ink. Since that time, the value of my property, the tax assessor's figures, has increased 11%. My taxes have skyrocketed 80%. That's 80%. Desperate to stem out of control tax increases, I supported the charter revision. In the referendum, 44% of the people who cast votes to abolish the RTM. I urge you to seriously consider what this means. 44% of your voting constituents are either dissatisfied with your performance or they do not understand what it is that you do. Either way, the results illustrate the need for change. I am a client in a client service business. If 44% of my clients told me they wanted to fire me, I would immediately make some drastic changes. To that end, I was encouraged by the positive comments of the 2 Vote No proponents who addressed you last month. Both speakers pointed out areas for improvement that I wholeheartedly agree with, and here are my recommendations. I'm just gonna, just for essence of time, we're gonna just cut this really quick. So he's recommending a minimum attendance requirement. He is asking for public education and outreach as to what RTM does, and to have meetings or to be available. He is asking for more government oversight of the rest of the Groton government, its employees, vendors, and appointees. He is asking us to scrutinize and challenge the Board of Education and the superintendent, the economic development staff, and he would like us to exert our budget authority. So this, he also, he's asking us to surgically examine the budget, especially the education budget, and uncover waste and inefficiency. Every taxpayer wants better schools and good services. At the same time, no taxpayer wants their money wasted on needless projects, duplication, or effort or overpayment. He believes that the RTM can provide a valuable service to the people if we make these changes. So this email, and this is from Carl, Perazzotti at 69 Noble Avenue, and we will go ahead per moderator's discretion and forward it on to the RTM. Thank you.
Representative Kwiatkowski?
Thank you. I have two things. The first thing is regarding RTM outreach. Representative Whitney got in touch with the PTO at Northeast Academy, and we're hoping to meet with them, our whole district, in January. And I contacted both of our fire districts in town, which was the Center of Groton Fire District and Old Mystic, and we're making arrangements to meet with them also in January. The second thing is this letter that you've asked me to read that Representative Whitney and I received from Carol Mackin. I think we got it because she says District 5, but the problem is not in District 5. This past week, I spoke with the town clerk, the chief of police, a former RTM member, about a concern I have regarding the entrance to the library and senior center. Although this matter should be brought to your attention as members of my RTM district. There is a traffic light on Newtown Street at the entrance to the library and senior center. During my daily workouts in the fitness room at the senior center, I have watched numerous cars make a left at the traffic light into the parking lot and then proceed to cross the double yellow lines in the lot and drive on the wrong side as they pass in front of the senior center. Once they are out of the curve in front of the senior center, they usually move over to the right lane as they proceed to the library. I think the problem can be attributed to the curve in front of the senior center. But since there are so many people who do cross the double yellow lines, I felt the problem needed to be presented to those who can address the issue before there is an accident. Perhaps something similar to the Go Right sign, which sits at the intersection of Route 1 and South Anguilla Road in Stonington, would work. I appreciate your hard work on the RTM and realize this is just one of many issues with which you must contend. If you have any questions, so on, sincerely, Carol Mackin.
Thank you. And I would just note that that has been referred to the Public Safety Committee. So hopefully it'll be taken care of. We don't have the authority to really address that here in this body. Traffic. We don't, yeah, traffic authority. And the first comment that you made, I would just ask that perhaps you wait until this, to meet with your constituents till this committee has a chance to meet, and especially to hammer out those FOIA requirements.
Sure.
So thank you. Anyone else? Representative Lambert?
Good evening. Oh, glad.
Yeah, whatever.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Last week, members of the Black Engineering Council of Electric Boat, which I'm a part of, helped organize delivery of holiday turkeys this season. I wanted to acknowledge the efforts of several individuals who have really helped out. Jamal Beckford, Aziz Layani from District 1, and Harvin Rose, and everyone in the electric boat community for their generous donations of 97 turkeys for families in need across the Groton Public Schools. The food and service director helped in the organization, so I also wanted to acknowledge his efforts in this community service. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank Electric Boat. Thank you for that service. That's great. Representative Washington?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I, too, received a letter from Carl Perizzotti, an email from him, and it's about the 8.7% mill rate hike. He states, since I will soon be leaving for Florida, I would also like to raise the issue of the 8.7% increase in the mill rate for FYE 2018. The Town Council originally justified this increase as needed to cover a $5 million shortfall in the education budget due to state cutbacks in aid. The state cutback never materialized, and the tax increase was not needed for the education budget. The Town Council then decided to keep the $5 million, saying it was needed for the reserve fund in order to maintain our bond rating. The amount needed for the reserve fund, $5 million, was collected in 1 year. So the $5 million was collected. Why then wasn't the mill rate lowered back down by the 8.7% for subsequent years once the reserve fund had been built up as the Town Council had insisted? What is the additional $5 million in taxes being used for each subsequent year they are being collected? Does anybody know? Meanwhile, they raised taxes yet again on top of this for FYE 2019. For reference, I have attached a chart depicting the alarming rise in the mill rate. Please find out where this money, $5 million a year, is being spent and why the mill rate hasn't been lowered back down by the 8.7% now that the $5 million has been collected.
Thank you. Representative Katowski, do you have another communication? No. All right. Any other communications? Okay. Thank you. So we're going to move on to our report from the town manager.
Good evening. On the financials first, preliminary fund balance, and if you don't have a copy of the main handout, they're over there, as well as a handout on the UPS for later. Preliminary fund balance as of June 30th, 2018, approximately $18 million, which is 14.8% of the FYE 2019 general fund adopted budget. Numbers should be finalized soon. General contingency budget for FYE 2019 was approximately $450,000. If the RTM approves the budget amendment on the docket for tonight, then it would be down to, let's see, $392,890. And then the capital reserve fund is at $1.3 million. And if the UPS 330,000 budget amendment goes through, it would be down to about $1 million. Just a couple of quick other items. John Reiner, our planning director, is here to update you tonight, so I'm going to leave a lot of my time to him. He'll be up in a second here. But just to mention, we did have a public hearing on the blight ordinance at our last meeting of the town council. It now has to, now we've had the public hearing, it'll go to the committee of the whole next week, and then back to the next full town council meeting on January 2nd. So assuming it does get approved, then it will come here after that. So you'll probably be seeing that. And we have an existing blight ordinance. It's just updates to the blight ordinance. It's not a new ordinance. And then just to mention, the town council has directed me to research and look into options for a local bid preference on our purchasing policy. So we're gathering information. I've contacted CCM, and Cindy Landry's reaching out to her counterparts, and we're compiling, and then we'll be reporting to the town council. So just letting you know that that is being looked at. A couple people have asked me about that. Other than that, just to mention, I don't know if people saw the rain garden over at the Human Services Building. That was came down the pipe really quickly, grant from the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District. They paid for everything. Our Public Works did a good job doing some in-kind labor, and Councilman Baumgardner pursued this grant and got it, and he did a great job on that. So just to mention, it came out really nice there if you haven't seen it. And after that, like I said, I've got John Reiner here to talk about economic development.
That's terrific.
But if you have any questions for me before that, please feel free. Sorry.
Mr. Reiner, would you like to give us a presentation? Oh, did anyone have any questions for, oh, sorry, Representative Whitehouse? I didn't see his hand.
I did have one concern I want to bring up. So the blight ordinance looks like what's going to be voted on is very good. But when I looked at that earlier, I found one key error in it, that because of a missing element, it would have declared the transfer station a blight. And prior to that, in the ethics ordinance, there was an error in that would have made one of our sitting town councilors immediately in violation. And I'm glad I was able to catch those errors, but don't we have an attorney whose job it is to catch these errors before they reach public hearings?
No, the error I think you're talking about was in the existing ordinance, not in the changes, if I'm correct. Is that
No, it was one of the new.
Was
So
it-
there were two new parts. One referred to the zoning regulations, and that's what caught the exception. And the second one was just flat out, I don't remember the exact wording, basically you can't store trash or whatever on any property in Groton, public or private, no exceptions.
Well, let me bring John. John was the lead on the ordinance.
But is it more a general question of in a series of ordinances I've seen errors that, I mean, I've caught, because frankly I've been playing D&D and Magic for decades, and so I'm used to looking at rules and catching those things. But I feel like a paid lawyer, the town does have a lawyer, yes?
Yeah, there's many.
Okay,
Yeah.
that the lawyer should be catching errors better than just an experienced gamer.
No, I agree. But John can speak specifically to the new one.
Sure. John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services. Normally the podium's a little more that way so I can see everyone. Good evening. Specifically on the blight ordinance, I did talk to the town attorney. He felt that some of those items that you had brought up were certainly valid, and we modified the language a little bit. It could have been interpreted that the allowed uses within the zoning regulations exempted that from the blight ordinance, but we did make it a little bit clearer. So sometimes it's the interpretation of ordinances, everybody looks at it a little bit differently. We were making it stronger than what we had. We did make some minor tweaks. I think one of the comments that you had brought up, he felt that the way the language was written now did cover it, but something else we did strengthen it a little bit. I mean, that's one of the things, when we take things through the public hearing process, we have town attorneys, we have staff look at things, but then it's also good to have other sets of eyes look through things and kind of think of it, looking at something from multiple different angles. And sometimes that's why, you know, whether it's an ordinance, a policy, or a plan, we do the best that we can through paid staff, but then we always appreciate and need the public comment to kind of test out some of the theories. He had also revised and written blight ordinances in other municipalities, and we had taken some of the language from those to really make it clean and straightforward. So he was mirroring a lot of the best practices in other places in Connecticut.
And I think at our last meeting, we discussed how we could get feedback through the town council, through the town manager on things like this. So, you know, Mr. Burt's happy to take our feedback and apply it where it's appropriate.
And to reinforce John's point that it was legally correct. It's just from attorneys, you know, looking at it, yes, it's legally correct. But if a layperson looked at it, oh, yeah, I can see how they would see that, would read it that way. So we better make it more clear. So.
And any other questions from Mr. Burt?
Okay, again, good evening. I try to come before the RTM every once in a while, give you an update on some of the initiatives and projects that we're working on. I know you have a long agenda tonight, so I'll try to make some of the things I'm going to talk about relatively brief. The first thing I want to talk about are just some of the current projects around town that are under construction. If people are driving around, some of the things that you'll notice. So for example, and this is all good, these are things that are adding to the tax roll, and that's, you know, one of the big goals that we have that we've heard from the councils and RTMs. The Mystic Business Park down on Flanders Road, 6 buildings in total. Their 4th building is under construction. At full build out, that whole site will be about 88,000 square feet. I'm sure many of you have seen Groton Utilities water filtration plant upgrades up on Pequannock Road. They're doing a major building expansion, a new water tank, and significant technology upgrades. Mystic Shipyard is adding 2,000 square feet. That's currently under construction. The Groton multifamily apartments up on Pleasant Valley Road and Route 12. 147 units, that's under construction. The first building is completely up. They're still doing some of the fitting on that. The pad is down on the community center that they're building, and there'll be another couple of structures that they'll be building on that site, probably putting some other foundations down in the spring. Central Hall, which I know we've all been real excited about for a long time. If you haven't been in Mystic lately, it looks great. Take a few steps back, not into the street, don't get run over. The upper floors look great. Down below, they're still doing some of the siding, but the windows are up. I know the scaffolding will be coming down sometime soon. That's a 33,690 square foot mixed-use building, and again, very excited that one's moving forward. Girard Nissan on Gold Star Highway is doing some multi-phase renovations. Walker Hill Road, another storage tank that's under construction. Groton Village Condos on Fort Hill Road, over by where the down the street from the town hall. That's 19 units of new multifamily under construction. Beard Brewing and Mystic Cheese on Leonard Drive. They have a 10,500 square foot building that's under construction now, so that's they're going to be brewing some beer, making some cheese in town. There's a new CrossFit gym, also on Leonard Drive, 9,900 square feet. There's going to be a gym facility as well as some other healthcare providers that'll be in there. The Sandbox Sports Volleyball at 1500 Gold Star Highway. That's a new 1,400 square foot facility under construction, almost done. I think they got put in a bind just with a lot of the asphalt plants are closed now due to the cold weather, so most of that site's pretty complete. Colonel Ledyard Estates on Colonel Ledyard Road is a 15-lot subdivision that's currently under construction. And a few things that we're looking forward to that'll be construction that we anticipate this year. Mystic Shipyard is looking to build a new 35,000 square foot storage and repair building. We've received a special permit application for Sift Bake Shop down in Mystic. They're going to put a big addition on the back and going up a bit. The old Bank of America building in Mystic on 54 West Main Street is, they're looking at a reuse on that. Obviously, the middle school that was voted on by the Planning Commission last night and approved, 155,000 square foot building that's currently under review. Crossroads Square at 255 Route 12, a new building we'll see there. The Big Y is doing some interior improvements. McDonald's on Long Hill Road, some interior improvements. Hilton Garden Inn is doing a small addition to their bar. We're going to see a new restaurant on 12 Water Street, the old Zang's. We met with the owners on that last week or 2 weeks ago, so that's going to be moving forward soon. We're expecting an application for some micro apartments on 12 Water Street, also as part of that. EB is going to be relocating into the old Pfizer cold storage building next to the Caldor building. Grove Avenue, there's a 4-lot subdivision over there. And the luxury cat kennel on North Road is something that we also expect. A lot of other construction projects around town that have happened in the last year. So I think the more you drive around, the more you see a lot of these commercial things. Some of them are of significance. Some of them are just small improvements, but each one does make a difference in the bigger picture of some of the things that we're doing and trying to grow the grand list. Some of the big picture projects that we've been working on for a while, folks have been hearing about our tax increment financing program. So today we actually emailed out to our tax increment financing advisory committee, and I think tomorrow we'll be emailing out to the Economic Development Commission the final draft for the Route 1 master plan for the TIF district. So we have a policy in the town allowing TIF. The city has a policy in town allowing for tax increment financing. Those are really the biggest hurdles, is setting that policy in place, letting developers know that we have it. We've been talking to a number of developers about TIF and some of the projects that they can do in town. As development happens within those districts that we've identified, I think that's something that'll help really grow our tax base moving forward. I expect the town's Route 1 master plan, we expect to take it before the town council in January. There's a mandatory 90-day referral period to the Planning Commission, so it'll probably be late spring, very early summer by the time we adopt that. There'll have to be a formal public hearing. The RTM will get a bite at that apple also to take a look at it, again, through that public hearing, public comment process. If Representative Whitehouse or others have comments on those on that document, we'd really appreciate it. You know, not just getting our eyes, the EDC, the advisory committee, the Planning Commission, the council, but others also. Constantly promoting economic development. There's a lot of things when you're talking about economic development. It's marketing, it's promotions, it's getting the word out about Groton. And one of the things we try to do in our promotions, we have a new logo, the Explore More Groton. We go to trade shows. We give out materials to get people talking about Groton and recognizing Groton. Tonight I brought some water bottles for the RTM members. Now some people might say, oh, what's a water bottle going to do? If you want a water bottle, they're in the box over there. I handed a few out. Don't leave them at home. Take them out with you. I want this to be a conversation piece. If people start talking more about the good things that are happening in Groton, it's going to spread. It's going to be a good thing. We want to promote what is good happening in here. Hey, did you know Electric Boat's hiring? We're going to be building a lot more subs. There's a lot of new development that people are proposing, trying to improve the quality of life here. Hey, we got great new schools that are being built. If this can be a conversation starter, it's worth the $4.50 that we spend on these, giving them out to people, again, getting the word out, promoting Groton. That's a really important piece. If you talk to anybody that's doing marketing and promotions, they're always trying to get swag, they're trying to get conversation starters. So something to keep in mind. Please grab one on your way out from the box over there. Our website's up and running. If you haven't seen that, I think many of you have, exploremoregroton.com. Please check it out. There's a great aerial view video that we put together working with the library staff. I know a lot of people are very interested in the property redevelopment, the public property redevelopment that we've been working on for a number of years. And I know we talk about, all right, you know, we're doing the marketing, we're doing the promotions. Well, a lot of things are happening, and very soon we're going to have a lot of good news for you. So, Mystic Education Center, we issued an RFP. We did interviews. We're now working with a preferred developer and the state on that property. We haven't signed a dotted line yet. There's no approved plans. When we say we're working with a preferred developer, it's just with a developer. That developer, once we sign up with them, working with the state, with the town council, they then have to bring in plans. They have to get their zoning straight. They have to go through a planning process, a very public process for any development that they want to see on that property. But we go through a very rigorous process for each one of these properties, selecting a developer that we know can actually build on the site, can get financing on the site, has a reputation, and can show us projects that they've built that will be successful. So that's something, it takes a while to do it. A little more time, a little more complicated because it's also a state property. It's not something that's under the town's control. Another great property that we've been working on that's moving pretty quickly, Groton Heights Elementary School, located within the city. So we've been partnering with the city on this. About a year ago, we did a zoning text amendment before the city to help expand some of the ways that we can get uses in there while preserving the historic building. Again, we issued an RFP, we held interviews, and right now we're working with a preferred developer. No dotted line has been signed, in close cooperation with the city, and I'm hopeful that sometime in the next month or two, we'll have an agreement with the developer that they're the preferred developer. Now they then also have to go through that public process, redeveloping, making a proposal of what they can do for the property. Groton Gateway or the Groton Sealy School, we're working with a professional brokerage firm. They expect to have a short list of developers for us sometime in January of who we can work with on that property. Again, getting that preferred developer. Most likely, you know, we've been talking about Sealy for a while. We're going to see a multifamily development up there. But again, has to go through a planning process, thinking about buffers to the surrounding neighborhood, access issues, trying to work with abutting property owners for some of the access. So those are things that, again, it takes some time, but I think we'll have some really good news in the coming months. 529 Gold Star Highway is a piece of property the town received a number of years back through tax foreclosure. We've been working with, we did an RFP on that a couple of years ago. We've been working with the developer. They have a national architecture firm, development firm that does some great projects from all around the country that they're working with. Again, no dotted lines have been signed, but once we have some good news on that and someone actually selected on it, we'll certainly let the RTM know. Sealy School and Colonel Ledyard will begin our marketing on those in the coming months, and we'll see what happens with those properties. We don't have the keys yet. I know we're working with the superintendent on Pleasant Valley School. If we want to show the property, get inside the building, we'll work with him and his staff on that particular piece of property. Zoning regulation rewrite. I know it's taken a little while. These things take time. We hadn't done them in 30 years. And, you know, I've had a few people ask, well, why does this take so long? If any of you have gone to one of the zoning commission meetings, you'll know why. I mean, the level of detail we're getting into on this document is really down into the weeds. This is the zoning that allows, permits, or doesn't allow things to happen on property. We don't want to mess this up. We want to be very careful in how we do it. I think we're doing it a very good way. At this point, we should be wrapping up actually writing and drafting the document probably sometime in February. The referral process, public hearings, will take about 2 to 3 months for that, and we're looking at the latest for having these adopted by July of 2019. When we talk and meet with and work with developers that are looking to come into town, if they ask about the zoning, we show them what we're working on. Some of the multifamily and mixed use regulations, we've actually been doing a lot of outreach to the development community to get input from them of what they're seeing around other municipalities, and if there are things that we're doing regulatorily that would scare them away. Again, we're not giving away the store, but just trying to make sure we're not being overly restrictive or overly prescriptive on certain items that we want to make sure that the market has the ability to fluctuate and get the type of development that we want, but also is representative of what the larger market is looking for. Another really exciting project, just under some of the grants that we're working on. We've been working with the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. They received an over $300,000 grant about a year and a half ago, working on a joint land use study around the subbase, trying to look at compatibility with land use issues. That project was completed. They also received another over $300,000 grant to look at actually implementing that project. A lot of the times we work on plans, we work on policies. That sets the framework for things. We then have to then spend time and money to implement these programs. They're going to be looking at different transportation options around Groton because of the subbase and EB's growth. How can we get people around better? Some of that's going to be looking at how we're trying to concentrate growth to our village centers, the downtown, a much larger housing analysis. With all that EB growth and employment, how many people are going to move here? Where are they going to be coming from? Right now, we have 26,000 jobs in Groton. 80% of those people don't live here. How many people would like to live here if there was the housing stock or the housing availability types for people here or in other regions? So those are some things that we're hoping to grab out of that, as well as some to work on some of the zoning around the base, another big piece of that project. So there's a lot of other things we're working on, day-to-day projects and some other longer-range planning projects. But again, in light of the time that you're going to be here tonight, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have some.
Thank you. Representative Kotowski?
Thank you. Well, you answered some of my questions, but I have to say, I hope this works. But I think it's a waste of $4.50. Okay. Regarding the zoning regs, I sent you a couple questions, and in 2009, there was a planning to-do list, and it had zoning regs on it. So that's, okay, a long time. And it seems ridiculously long to me, okay? Working in a land use department, I know it takes a long time, but it's taking too long, okay? And I would like to know how much money has been spent on it, including consultant fees. I think I put that in my question.
Yes.
And so I would really like an accounting of that. So we've been pouring a lot of money into the planning department, and I want to start seeing some measurable results. It sounds like everything's almost there. Every time you come before us, we're getting there. It's so exciting, but we're just not there yet. And my second question is about economic development, and you also have answered some of that. But it's my understanding that economic development is intended to make the town more attractive to businesses and residents. One specific way to do that is to lower the tax burden on the taxpayers. Please detail one way the millions of dollars, the additional staff the taxpayers have provided the planning department for economic development has resulted in tax relief for the taxpayers. Specifically, How and when will the projects that you listed here reduce taxes? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best. So back in 2009, I believe it was recommended in the Plan of Conservation and Development, the previous one, that the town should update their zoning regulations. It might have been on a planning to-do list also. I started working here in late 2014. I believe that there was a zoning rewrite project that was going on during the 2012-ish, 13-ish era on the conservation, design, open space subdivisions, and I know there was a lot of, again, before my time, the things that I've read, the things that I've heard through it, it was very controversial, and it didn't really get too far. I don't know the exact dollar amount that was spent on that then. What we are doing now is a comprehensive rewrite, and again, we, in the time that I've been here, was talking about how for a long time we needed to rewrite the zoning regulations. When I first started here, there were some small sections that internally staff was rewriting, looking specifically at Mystic. And before, every time somebody wanted to change any type of use or anything, they had to go to the zoning commission, get a special permit. It was a much more onerous process. We changed that. There were a number of smaller things that we changed. We actually didn't get any budget for changing the zoning regulations until 2016. That's when the town council, RTM, allocated $130,000 on that project. Previous years to that, during 2015, we're able to utilize some funding due to salary savings and other budgetary savings within OPDS's budget. So the total balance for the zoning rewrite project, or the end outcome, is going to be $238,000. That's something that we do once every 30 years. We should be doing it a little bit. That's all for consultants. That's all consultant fees for that.
You have a follow-up question?
Okay. So we're spending $238,000 on consultants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And staff is also spending time. Why are we doing both?
Have you, one, the consultants give us a product, we're reviewing it, taking it to the zoning commission. The commission has many questions, many issues. They want us, as well as our consultants, to be reviewing this, looking at it from different angles. How are the best practices in Groton worked before? What are the things that we're changing? Have you come to any of the zoning commission meetings in the recent past on this? Okay. I'd implore you to come to a couple more and hear the level of detail that we're going through this at the staff and the consultant level on these projects. It's even the amount of time that we're taking to write something like the blight ordinance. I think we've been working on that ordinance, pretty simple, for over 6 months. The amount of time, the back and forth between the council, town attorneys, town staff. You don't want to rush through these things. I wish it was quicker. I wish we could do it faster, but it takes a lot of review. As far as your question on economic development, taxes are something that I believe we hear more about from town councils and RTMs than we do from businesses. When we're talking to prospective developers and prospective businesses, they're thrilled about how low our tax rate is in Groton compared to the rest of Connecticut. It's a fact of how it is. I haven't dealt with any developers that have been turned away by our tax rate. That's not a single one. If people here are hearing that from developers, that they don't want to come do business here because the town's tax rate is too high, please have them come talk to me. There are programs, whether it's tax abatements, there's TIF, there are things we can do, or they might be very pleased to hear about how easy people get through our development approval process, and that often weighs into it. High taxes when people are looking to locate businesses, or just taxes, yeah, that might fall into the top 10 reasons, but there are a lot of other factors that fall into business location. You've asked for me to detail the way that we've spent millions of dollars in additional staff. So our economic development budget hasn't had millions of dollars in it in the time that I've been here. In the staff that my department has, back in 2000, or in the early 2000s, we had about 20 people in the Office of Planning and Development Services, including building code inspections, planning, economic development. We have 15 right now. So we have less staff now than we had a number of years back. We're doing the best that we can. These things take time. It's taken Groton a long time to get to the place where we are now. I've been here 4 years and a few months. I can't snap my fingers. My kids tease me all the time. But if I could snap my fingers like, you know, Thanos in the Marvel movies and make economic development happen a little bit faster here, I wish I could. But these things take time. We have to attract the development community. We are meeting with a lot of developers, national scale developers that want to build multifamily housing in Groton. That's something that's really hot right now. We see the need for that. Once more people come, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, other service type businesses will come. We make a good amount of tax dollars off of multifamily housing. We're hoping that as people reinvest, once we get a couple, 2, 3 good multifamily housing developments built and people see what a good market there is, we'll also see some of our existing property owners, again, the multifamily housing, start reinvesting in the property. So those are some of the things that we expect to see, again, in the next couple of years. I don't promise anything's going to happen tomorrow or next month. I think we'll have some good news in the next 2 to 3 months about development that'll be happening at Mystic Ed Center, at the Sealy School, at Groton Heights. Again, these things take time. I wish I could make them happen faster.
Thank you. Representative Wells?
Yes, I don't know if it's just me, but I tried to locate, I had a cousin that asked, why don't we sell some of these old properties? And I said, gee, you know, they're on the market. But I went to the town site, and it took a little while before I I couldn't find Explore More, but I had to use a search engine. Okay. I was wondering, you know, maybe it's me, or is it just, you know, from the town website you can't find Explore More Groton?
No, it is on the town's website. I think there's a link right on the front page of the town's website.
That's probably why I missed it. I looked for your department.
Okay. There should be a link from our department also. I know we have a few links from the town's webpage that'll direct you.
I tend to not see things on that. But the other thing, I did attend one zoning commission meeting where some consultants presented. It was very interesting. They've added a few things like 500-year shopping event to my vocabulary, and I was really quite impressed with the presentations. So yeah, it's worth it. I only attended one.
Thank you. Representative Mello Miller?
Thank you. So I have 2 questions. The first is, so I have heard from various constituents in the last month or so about, the letter I read earlier was on this point as well, is that we are seeing property taxes go up slightly, taxes going up, but the values not really meeting that. So is the assumption, so you just said that you're trying to attract all these people and these businesses. So for the residents' sake, can we assume that taxes will go down when we attract more residents and we attract more people?
I think one of the things that we see is taxes stabilize. I don't know how often taxes really ever go down, whether it's federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes. I can't make that kind of promise. I do think we can see things stabilize more. We have a very healthy tax base here in town with Electric Boat, with Pfizer. I mean, those are things that a lot of other municipalities of our size would die for. Yeah.
So the assumption is, yes, that taxes will stabilize when we attract more residents and businesses. Do you have a benchmark that you're trying to reach as far as X number of businesses or X number of homes or X number of residents? Or do you have numbers in your head, in your office that you're trying to reach?
It's not quite as precise as reaching a benchmark for businesses. We look at around the town, we have land zoned for commercial, mixed use, for residential. Not all the residential land in town is great land to develop. You start looking north of like Route 184, there's a lot of very difficult land to develop. But areas benchmarks we'd like to see is how can we get people to reinvest in their existing properties? So whether it's commercial or residential. Something that we looked at about a year and a half ago was sales around town, and after people buy properties, how are they then pulling building permits and spending over $5,000 or $10,000 to reinvest in the properties? We're not seeing a lot of reinvestment in existing properties. Certain neighborhoods around town, we certainly are, but town as a whole, no. Things start depreciating. So that's one of the concerns that we have, is making sure we're staying on top of reinvesting, whether it's in shopping plazas that people aren't reinvesting in. A great example of when someone did reinvest in a shopping plaza, the Aldi's, that new building, how they redeveloped into that. The things we can do, we can create incentives for people to develop, we can promote, we can market, we can streamline our process, we can let folks know that it's easier to do business here than other places. And with a job center like Electric Boat, Pfizer, the Navy base, and other employers, how quality of life, great schools, great parks and rec programs, that's going to attract people to come here. It takes a while to get that word out.
Do you have real estate people advising you on this? Because I mean, you're talking about a lot of real estate issues. So I'm assuming you have background in real estate, or you have people in the office that do.
We deal with real estate, we deal with economic development, with planning. Some of the consultants that we pull in are economists. They
But you didn't answer my question. So do you have
my
real estate
background?
or?
I have a master's degree in urban and community planning. I have a master's degree in marine and coastal management. My undergraduate is in political science and marine affairs. I've gone to real estate seminars. I'm not a realtor. I'm not an economist. These are programs and things that we look at, best practices around the country, around New England, and we work with experts that advise us on the best way of doing these things.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So you're talking about all this real estate stuff, and you're bringing in consultants to advise you on real estate things. So you're telling me that no one in your office that's working on this has a real estate background?
No one in our planning and development office. My economic development manager has sold and managed the sale of public property redevelopment before. None of us are realtors.
So, okay, and maybe someone else can ask a follow-up on that, but to me, that's a little worrisome that from a resident standpoint, that you're talking about presenting these properties and trying to get people to business, and I'm sorry, I'm going to call on Representative Rogers, who her husband is in development, and so at least you could say, well, my family is in it. But you're telling me that you've gone to seminars, but that doesn't. I don't think that gives residents a real vote of confidence in terms of.
Wrap it up, Representative Mello.
In terms of that. Thanks. So my second question, and I have to agree with Representative Kotowski.
I think you've had two questions, haven't
Yes,
you?
my second question. 450, I apologize. Please. So 450 for these water bottles. Was that the most first of all, how much did it cost for all of these water bottles? And second of all, was that really the most effective way of utilizing this planning when there's, okay, maybe it was more of a comment. I apologize, but that's.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out and giving us an update on the progress. As I understand, it does take time to get things moving. My comments start with, I know when I originally reviewed your packet that you had with the folder, portfolio-looking folder, I didn't see anything in there representing the schools, and I just hope that we would add highlight some of our positive aspects of our schooling. My understanding is bringing in young, thriving people that are going to stay and live. One of the things they're going to look at is schools. So it's one thing to have EB, but one of the reasons they're not staying, you want to attract them on the education level.
That is something that we're working
Okay.
with some staff from the school
Right.
department on
Something.
getting that into our marketing
Right.
and promotional materials.
Yeah, I think that should be in like as soon as possible, especially with new families coming in. The other aspect was our current properties. One of the criticisms in this town is how we leave things in disarray. For example, why is it that when we vacate buildings in this town that were being used by many different municipalities, including schools, that we let them deteriorate? You talk about investing in the properties. I feel in this town we do not invest in the property. We are like, we vacate places after we no longer are going to use them because we know we're going to build new or renovate, and then we leave these other ones with all this stuff in them that nobody wants to buy. So I think that we need to come up with a plan as to how in Groton we want to leave our current buildings and what standing they should be left in. With that being said, since yesterday the voters have spoke and the referendum went through, and we are going to be building as new on our new middle schools. The middle school will be new, and our current middle schools will become new elementary schools, and there'll be closures of a few more possible elementary schools. What is our plan now? That's already in writing. It's already been approved. We should be working today on how we are going to effectively try to get those in the market, why they're still hot, why people are still in the building, why the plumbing is still working, why it's considered safe.
They're going to be torn down, aren't they?
I guess whatever the plan is. Some say they're going to be, it hasn't been finalized, but the plan, the picture should be starting to be coming open. The other question I have is that I just saw recently that we were approved for medical marijuana in Groton, and I had questions about how that will help our tax rolls at all, and where that exactly that's going to be located. I'd like some more information on that as well.
For the the medical marijuana facility, that was, I think, we haven't gotten a formal application or building permit. They were looking to do it in the old Benny's Plaza. I don't know which storefront they're looking to locate in. How that'll impact our economic development, I'm not really sure. I know in places where they've seen recreational marijuana, there's been, just in Massachusetts, there were 2 dispensaries that were recently opened up, and in the first week, I think they sold like $4.5 million in sales. It's caused gridlock in the towns. A lot of people are really concerned about it. That's a whole different animal. I don't know how the medicinal marijuana is going to impact us from an economic development standpoint. I don't know if it's going to have that big of an impact. We might be a little bit more of a destination, but other municipalities that have that, again, I'm not sure how much that's really driven that.
Thank you. Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. John, I think you're doing a wonderful job. Is this on? Anyway, you can hear me. Close enough.
No, but the people on TV can't, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to answer some Representative Mello Miller's questions, in real estate, John wouldn't have this. A realtor will go to developers and will ask developers, what would you like to build, or what would you like to find? Is it commercial? Is it residential? And what would happen is we would talk to the different towns and areas that these people would be in. We're coming up with a plan. One of the first things they look at is the tax rate of the town. They look at the infrastructure in the town.
Not to cut anybody off, it's going to be a long night.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. So the question I have for John is this.
Thank you.
With all of us rewriting and going to the zoning meetings, we're incorporating the planning and the zoning together
Correct.
to streamline all of this process, correct?
Yes.
So that when we go as develop our town and say, hey, come to our town, these are the things that people look at, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The second question that I have for you is EB. When do they start construction? Are we having another meeting with them to see when they're going to start the docking and the dredging and how it's going to impact the town and the traffic?
I know that EB has been meeting with the city. I believe John has been also staying up to date on what they're doing and what their timeline is. It seems to keep shifting a little bit further back. I know that they've been hiring quite a bit over the past year and a half. Again, some of it's expansion, a lot of it's retirements and attrition. But we're certainly keeping our fingers on the pulse of when the city's getting applications for expansion in the development projects there, but we're working together because anything that happens there is going to have big impacts on the town.
So I just want to say, Representative Bailey, did you say your thing?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a recommendation that we kind of wrap things up so we can get through what business
Thank you, you
that's
said
on
that.
the
I just
plate.
didn't know if you had
Thank you.
something else. I wanted to, encourage people to be brief and be respectful, and I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Byrd.
Just to mention on the electric boat, Mayor Hedrick and I have semi-regular meetings with Electric Boat. We were there about a month ago. They're undertaking a traffic and parking study right now. They're trying to get through that. And of course, you saw in the paper about the some of the houses in the area that they're dealing with. But the city planning department or building department has been reviewing plans. That doesn't come through the town. But Mayor Hedrick's been keeping me up to date, as well as EB regularly reaches out to me. So I think we have a pretty good handle on what's happening with that. Just wanted to comment on some of the earlier stuff on realtors and that type of thing. Just to go in a little more detail on what we're doing with the properties. With Sealy, I myself met with at least 15, maybe 20 developers and commercial brokers talking through, kicking around ideas for Sealy. And we ended up, we've hired a commercial broker to develop it, but not until we had a good idea of where it's heading, where the market is, what are the developers asking for out of that property, what do we think we can do. Now, our usual method is more of a longer method that really Paige brought from an earlier position. He has had a lot of success with it. Going to, marketing for a period of maybe 6 months or more, trying to get the word out there. Paige and Sam were just at the ICSC in New York, pitching Groton to different developers, meeting with developers there. And then with MEC, we had that group that solicited bids. We had some great bids. I've seen it. I'll be in on meetings negotiating for the final product, but we're well underway on some, and we have the expertise among a group of people to know where we're going with it and to do it right. And other than that, I did want to mention Pleasant Valley, or the comment Portia had about the schools. Of course, all the schools I have right now were turned over before I got here, and including Pleasant Valley. We are looking at taking over Pleasant Valley. We were going to do it sooner rather than later. However, we didn't have anything in our budget to maintain it as it is, even though there's certainly issues there, but we want to at least maintain it to the level it's at. So I had asked Gary to build it in the budget for the next time to pitch through here, and at the end of the school year, as we get into the new budget year, we would take possession of that and have the resources to take care of it. And anything new that comes on, we would do the same thing.
Thank you.
So.
Representative Chase?
Thank you. I'd like to get back to the TIF because you've been telling us month after month about you're in talks with developers on properties and specifically Route 117, 184. Do you have a timetable for implementation of any of these developers starting digging something?
Well, the development at 184 and 117, the ball's in his court right now. I don't have an application. There's some issues that he's working out that have nothing to do with the town, that don't have to do with zoning, don't have to do with tax increment financing, don't have to do with infrastructure. It's something that they're working out within their own program. They're very invested. They own a very large chunk of land there. They want to see it developed. There's some minor issues that are taking a lot longer than they originally thought in order for them to proceed. 2 years ago, he was chomping at the bit to get an application before us.
Right.
I haven't seen anything yet. So some of these things, I can't make somebody apply for something. I can't make them build things. And that's the difficult thing with trying to get people to build, trying to get people to invest.
Are they still talking to you, though, letting you know that they're still thinking about it at least?
Oh, yeah, I talk to them every couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I have one more question. It's a quick one. For planning and development, is it possible to separate those two when you do the budget so we know how much money goes to planning, how much goes to development?
You mean to economic development?
Yes.
So right now, when we...
Your department is planning and development, correct?
It's planning and development services, so it's planning and zoning.
Right.
It's economic and community development. It's building code enforcement and inspections. Yeah, so there's three main divisions within it.
So can those be separated out when you develop your budget for this coming year?
Those are separated out by certain cost centers. Every year, they're always separated out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention one thing. I can't give any details, but I was in a meeting with a developer last week who has done a past project. It was a really good project. and looking at doing something else. And he said they wouldn't develop here the first time without John and Paige, and they wouldn't be looking to develop again without John and Paige in place.
Well, thank you for that. So we're going to be wrapping this up. Representative Whitehouse?
I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Madam
Thank
Moderator.
you.
Two quick things. One, first about the consultants. You said $238,000. I assume that these skills like major zoning rates are not skills that are in the skill set of a regular staff.
Correct.
Because they'd be massively overqualified and thus massively overpaid if they did have those skills. So it seems to make sense to have consultants.
Yeah.
And just in
I
terms of
I do want to say that that's a project that's taking many, many years. I often hear about, these out-of-town overpaid consultants. And today I saw two of my consultants drive up to the building, one of them driving a Hyundai and the other one driving a very small Hyundai, and the other driving a very small Mazda. So we're getting a lot out of these folks.
Well, I don't think that has anything to do with how much they get paid, so it's irrelevant. Thank you.
And the other thing is in terms of the speed things are moving at. So you started in 2014. It sounds like some of these things, these buildings were sitting there until you came here and got them moving.
Yes.
So a lot of my background is marketing and sales, and currently my business is branding. And what I see, especially as liaison to the EDC, is I frequently have the thought of, am I sure this is government? Because what I see is a lot of a business-like approach to marketing, branding, development, sales. I mean, I do sales in the 5 figures. It sounds like you're doing sales in the 7, 8, 9 figures. Obviously, it's going to take a long time. There's going to be a lot of complexities, but it's a matter of staying on top of them, making sure that there's plenty in the pipeline. There's plenty of branding, and these things have been proven by every business, for-profit business. Stockholders always holding them accountable. Use these things, not necessarily bottles specifically, but going to trade shows, pens, all the rest, to get that brand out, because people have a certain impression of Connecticut, and if we can get a conversation going about Groton specifically, that really does help make a difference with bringing in those 7, 8, 9-figure projects.
Thank you. All right, so we have one more person that we'll take, and please be brief. Representative Washington.
We received a lot of information from you this evening, John. Can you give us a written report, what you have in the pipeline, when you think it's all going to materialize, whatever you're doing? Because I'm like a visual person, and I couldn't write everything down. So I would appreciate if you can give us a written report.
That's a terrific suggestion. It could go right on the back of the town manager's news or something like that. So we're going to move on now.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming before us. We're going to hear from Representative Grenier, Superintendent Grenier now with a report on the schools. Thank you. What? Yeah, ex officio member.
Well, I'm going to actually follow on Representative Washington's statement. I have a written agenda.
Is that
here,
the
so
same one that's over there?
It is.
Okay,
Has anyone
thank
not
you.
received a copy of this? So I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read everything, but I will say this. Tuesday night, I'll be meeting with the town council. Groton received a $17,500 increase in the ECS grant last year. And when towns receive increase in ECS, the budget, that has to be appropriated to the budget. So on Tuesday night, the town council will take action on increasing the board's budget by $17,500. If they don't, it's a 200% penalty in next year's ECS. So I'm hoping that will come into fruition. The other thing is I see Representative Jim Streeter. We are in the process of conducting a survey to name the new middle school, and we have received hundreds of suggestions, I'm happy to report. And so the committee will get together, I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, and we will look at those survey results, and ultimately the policy is that they'll recommend a name of the new middle school to the board. Facilities, not any big updates, just that the Northeast Academy air quality study is continuing. The engineering firm has been there. Fuston O'Neill is working with our computerized HVAC system. And the water testing update is, again, ongoing. We are replacing the fixtures and the piping in a couple of places that the state health department recommended, and then we'll do testing once those fixtures are replaced. You can read about the art gallery. That was a nice little thing last night. There is a security grant that we did not initially realize could cover something that we asked for in the CIP. The board CIP has a new phone system, and the state security grant, we were notified that is an eligible expense, and Groton, but it's very expensive. It's $455,000, but 58% of that would be reimbursed if in fact the CIP is approved. We talked about Pleasant Valley School, which we're going to help with making it available for development, but the board will retain it. That's actually where our robotics program works out, so it's actually a win-win, I think, for both systems. And I'm going to introduce the Assistant Superintendent, Susan Austin, and she and I are going to do if you remember last time I promised we'd do a little presentation on our statewide testing, so I'm going to help Ms. Austin.
Good evening, everyone. And we will keep this brief. A picture's worth 1,000 words, so I have lots of graphs to show you. This is the result of the state testing that occurred for FY18. So the students took these assessments back in the spring of 2018. It takes a little while for the state to get back the data. We're still waiting for another report on growth, but we're expecting to have that in December of this month. Just to orient you, this first slide is the SBAC ELA at the top, English Language Arts, and SBAC Math. Our 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students take this assessment. It's based on the Connecticut Core Standards. If you look at green, think Groton, go green. So anything that's green represents Groton. The blue is the state of Connecticut. If you look at ELA, we are at or above the state average in all grade levels, and I would say we are also into our 4th year of Readers and Writers Workshop, aligned with Columbia University Teachers College through a Department of Defense grant with a lot of embedded coaching and professional development, and I feel like we're starting to see those results with our students' performance. In mathematics, the story isn't as great. About half of our grade levels are at or above, and the others are slightly below. If you look at the 8th grade data, which is all the way to the right, those are our current 9th graders, and they really showed very good progress, all from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which you want to see trends of kids moving up, each year, the cohort. So we're really happy to see that in both ELA and math, they were performing better than the state. The next slide is the SBAC English Language Arts according to our district reference group. So those are other communities like ours, socioeconomically, size-wise, and in many different ways. And we really came out first with 58% of our kids, meeting the goal, meeting or above the goal in English Language Arts. Of course, we're always looking to make growth each year, and we are looking for student by student. So these data are looked at school data teams. We look at students' performance and make sure that if students need additional support in the classroom, that they get it. If they need enrichment, they also receive it. So we really look student by student. So this is just a kind of broad base to show you district results. The next slide shows you SBAC Math DERG results, which is district reference group. And we are second. Looks like Naugatuck was slightly above us. We were at 47%. And I think you did receive these. I do have a couple extras that I can leave behind. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me, saustin@Groton. The following one, our 11th graders, the state test, which is paid for by the state, is the SAT. And they take it in 11th grade. And this result is the English Language Arts, level 3 or 4, which is meet or exceeding standards. And it looks like we're coming in with the DIRG results second. Vernon beats us a little bit. We're at 63%. The next one is the DIRG results for mathematics. And we come out really as number 1 in the DIRG in mathematics. We've noticed that our ELA data has tended to be better than our math. And we're in a second year of Department of Defense, a grant to support mathematics. And we are working on it. That's kind of my baby, so I'm really passionate about it and see a lot of great things happening. The next page is local, because we like to look at our local, our neighbors. And the first blue bar is Connecticut, and then you see the second is Groton. And you see some of the neighbors, we're kind of neck and neck, Griswold, Ledyard, Montville. And you see like a North Stonington way up there, and Stonington. So there are other neighboring districts that are really ahead of us in these results. But give us time. And then the next results are our locals for math. And like I said, math we haven't seen as much, but we're only in the second year of some of this reform work. So you see some districts like Norwich and New London, of course, that are way below. And then following would be locals for the SAT. There's a double bar there. So the first bar, the darker bar, is ELA, and you can see that our students perform better in ELA. The lighter bar is mathematics. And in the blues, they do the same thing, ELA and then math. And that's it. So I'm most excited about the work that our teachers are doing around reforming ELA, mathematics, science with the NGSS standards. We also just received a Department of Defense grant in STEM. It's a 3-tiered plan that Dr. G and I work together with teachers and other folks in education. And so the 3 tiers are NGSS embedded coaching and curriculum development, K-12, outdoor STEM and having a program in the summertime and lots of enrichment for elementary, and then an international baccalaureate careers program, nursing, Project Lead the Way, and so we're quite excited about that as well. So I will answer any questions, and I can leave you some colored copies if you'd like to look at it closer. Thank you.
Representative Katowski?
I am really confused. If this is true, why are we in the Alliance District? I'm sorry.
Well, there are other factors in the Alliance District as well, like attendance and physical fitness, and they have many other contributing factors to being an Alliance District, and we're...
I'll give you one, sorry, one interesting. You see, we well outperformed NFA.
Use the microphone, please.
NFA is not an Alliance District because it's a semi-autonomous school. So there are many school districts that cannot be Alliance districts, but well, I've said this many times to put a fine point on it. We clearly are not on the Alliance list because of student performance, student academic performance. There are other measures that are included. There are, like, I think 19 standards that school districts are rated upon.
Okay. I have a couple other things. I have a financial request for the next meeting, and I'll give this to you. You don't have to write it down, okay? I am interested in an accounting of all the off-budget Board of Education money. There's two big items that I'm aware of, and it's the $4 million middle school magnet program. I'm just wondering, of the $4 million, how much has been spent to date? When will the $4 million run out? And then, of course, the follow-up question, what will happen when the money runs out? And I have the same question about the Department of Defense grant, which I believe is $750,000. And if there's any more,
I understand.
I would like to, I can
Yeah.
give you this.
We can give that to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have just one more little thing. Someone got in touch with me, and they asked me to ask you about this. At the high school, this person is concerned that the volleyball team, when you go to a volleyball game, all the families have to pay $5 to go to the games. So nobody goes to the games. And when they go to other towns, the bleachers are full. So this person asked me to bring this to your attention to find out why volleyball has to charge for admission when soccer, this is what I'm being told, soccer, track, I don't know, fencing, whatever else
Right.
is not charged.
Yeah. Well, the board looked at that, and I'll make a report next time.
Thank you. Representative Washington?
I was just wondering, how are we doing with closing the achievement gap?
So we look at that in great detail. And I have to tell you, one of the things that we've done as a district is we've eliminated basic classes so that all of our kids take college level classes and we support them, college or honors. We also have an AP and International Baccalaureate. Now we'll have a Careers International Baccalaureate. And we are seeing that many of our kids who, kids of color, kids of socioeconomics, much more diversity taking these classes, and we're monitoring their progress. So we do expect that that will happen.
That's on the high school level, though.
That's on the high school level. And there's really no tracking in elementary, and even in the middle, you don't see that until later on in the middle school. We have probably about 40% of our 8th graders taking algebra, and I think with this reform that we're going to start seeing in mathematics, because I've done this in 4 other districts, you're going to start to see that many of our 8th graders, maybe most of our 8th graders, will have the layered foundation of algebra, which is critical, because that can be a huge gatekeeper for our kids. And so it's under my, my tutelage, I'm hoping that we will see that change.
Representative Stanford? Oh, use your microphone, please.
What's kids of color?
So for minority students, so that they have, the state actually does reporting so that you can look to see different minorities and different groups of students. And then the socioeconomic piece too. So we want diversity in our schools, in all of our classrooms, to reflect what our community is.
Representative Bordelon?
I'll start with the numbers first. Looking at the SBAC scores that came home with my son and the state and how we're performing in the district, they were low. We were barely meeting it. This is a different cohort in the way that these graphs are pulled out. But when you look at the real numbers, it's actually different. And I encourage people to look at their children's portfolio thing that was sent home that explains it. It's actually kind of sad that younger students aren't being tracked. I feel that they should be. I know down at Claude Chester and a lot of the high minority populations tend to have or are showing lower scores, and I'm finding that the support is inadequate, and it's not equal across the spectrum. I know for a fact when my son went to Westside, the upper math class was not even being offered at the Westside. But it was on the other side. They weren't even offering the higher algebra because I was told at one point that students weren't qualified to take it, or they didn't have enough students to take it, and they had a high needs English as a second language at that school. And I know that has changed now.
That has changed.
But
yeah.
This is where we see these minority gaps not being closed because on one side of the town, the offer was not there. So children coming from West Side weren't able to go right into the higher math classes because they weren't given the option, and that's a fact. So my concern is, how are we closing these gaps? Looking at West Side, we have a lot of social economical issues. We have a lot of problems. We have a lot of problems at Catherine Kolnowski. We put a lot of names to things, but the numbers need to come up. When we look at the neighboring towns, I would say to somebody looking at this coming in for TIF that we're doing average. There's nothing outstanding up there. We didn't even use East Lyme as a neighboring school, and that number would be through the roof. So that's concerning. I mean, we've come a long way, but I still have concerns about how we're going to close that achievement gap because the students in the town deserve it. Back to the water issue as well, not getting away from that. Once again, it states here that we have an engineer hired for Northeast Academy, but at the high school, we have the maintenance, our district maintenance maintaining that. I'm also requesting that we get a detailed report of all the fountains and sinks that you have tested thus far, that we can visually see on paper where they're located, and what the allowable level numbers, which spigots are at allowable levels, which ones are having no lead, and which ones are the ones that you're working on, so we can actually visually see that throughout the building. And what is our long-term plan on the allowable level? What do we plan to do? Because once you find an allowable level, it could already, since your focus has been on these 3 areas, today they could be above the allowable level. So what is Groton's plan to revisit those allowable level? Once again, I stated every time, the allowable level in this town, we should be setting the standard as 0. Once lead enters the body, it does not leave the body, and we have children that are immune compromised up at the school who are struggling with different illnesses, and drinking out of any fountain with an allowable level poses a risk. So I would like to see a report, because I think in all fairness, we should know where that allowable level is, because some people might want to avoid it. So I would like a report on that.
Thank you. All right, so we have Representative Mello Miller.
Hey, and this is a question probably for Superintendent Grenier. I just was curious if probably by the next meeting, if you could get us an update. So we approved the CIP for the $50,000 for the water service, and if you could give us an update on how much we've spent and what we've done, because we keep hearing about this testing, but just to get an account for the CIP and where the $50,000 has been going. Sure. And just a really quick comment. I just want to commend you for trying to find the school security grant to find. You seem like you're finding creative ways of finding the funding. So I really do appreciate that, and that should help come budget time. But if you could just give us a status update on the $50,000 by next month, that would be great, just so we can be all held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse.
So I'm confused about the Alliance District designation, because I've heard 2 very different narratives about it, that, except for the fact that I hear the word Alliance, would sound like 2 different stories. Because here, what I'm hearing is it has to do with basically our failure to do this or that attendance or physical ed, or they can't run enough laps, I don't know. But what I hear from the Hartford side of it is that the band was extended intentionally from 30 to 33 to protect our funding from the state, so that our funding couldn't be cut from the state, and that it was actually a political move by representatives to protect our funding and get us more money for our schools, and thus isn't a sign of our failure, but just a sign of the work of our representatives to make sure we have money for our schools. So what if you could
Sure.
synthesize those 2 narratives?
Yeah, well, I think two of the things you said are definitely true. They did expand the number of school districts from 30 to 33. My understanding of the political movement was that the 3 districts that tested off vigorously fought to stay on the list, because there's a huge financial incentive. For Groton, it's $17 million. Because the governor's budget, as you remember, was to cut ECS by $17 million. So to be on the list is obviously a huge financial benefit to Groton. And then when you look at I don't know about that. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, frankly, that there was some political movement. I know for a fact the 3 districts that were slated to get off fought like really hard to stay on because of that. It certainly has the connotation of a school district that is struggling. The scores, every time I look at the scores, especially in mathematics where we do fairly well, but the fairly well compared to others is okay, but we're in the high 40s, which means 52% of the kids are not meeting the goal, which is really concerning to me. So compared to the other people, compared to the other districts, especially districts like us or NFA, we're doing quite well. But this notion of the Alliance District, I sort of as a taxpayer, I see the significant impact that the Alliance District has had, because it would have been a year ago, last spring, it was a projected $17 million cut to the finances of this town, which would have been catastrophic. So, I'm looking 3 years ahead, and if we come off the alliance, or the Alliance District may go away, which is entirely possible. But I'd like to sort of balance two thoughts. One is we're working hard, and the children are achieving quite well, and I think from the educational standpoint, from a performance standpoint, we're holding our own. But of course, we're never satisfied. We're always working harder. But from a financial standpoint, I want to make sure Groton is going to get every single dollar of state aid that it can. So it's kind of in a bit of dynamic balance, I guess, the best way I can answer that.
Thank you. Representative Rogers?
Thank you. I will make this brief. I have a comment based from two of my constituents who happen to be fifth graders at Northeast Academy. This year there's been a curriculum change in the mathematics curriculum, and the students are, in years past, from my understanding, Northeast Academy has been the one school to break children up into different math groups. And this year that has changed so that you're staying with your homeroom for math. And there's some dissatisfaction among some of the students. So I would just implore you to look at the results from Northeast. This is the first year that the math curriculum has changed in this way, have scores moved. My son was in the higher math group last year, and he's not having the best experience this year, being in one single classroom. So on his behalf, I wanted to make that comment and just implore you to look at the results at Northeast specifically and that change in the curriculum.
The actual curriculum has become much more rigorous and a lot more problem solving, using the work of a Dr. Fosno, who ran math in the city for all of New York City at City College, and also for looking at National Science Foundation programs. So when we've done our walkthroughs, one of the things we've noted is it's highly engaging, that kids are playing math games and kids are solving problems in multiple ways. So the actual curriculum and the way we're delivering it, I think there's more rigor. One of the things that many of our schools have done is to provide assistance in the classroom. So we have math specialists, we have math tutors, we have literacy specialists and tutors who actually go into the classroom and work in more small groups. So kids still get differentiation, so they're still with peers and solving problems in multiple ways. So just wanted you to know that that is happening, so hopefully he'll come home and talk about some of the games he's playing and the problems he's solving, because that's what's important.
All right, so the people I see with hands up have already spoken once, and since we're kind of in have other things, is there anyone who hasn't yet asked a question who would like to ask one of Dr. Grenier? No. All right, I would suggest Representative Washington?
It's quick.
Quickly, please.
So my misunderstanding is the Alliance District. Financially, it's good. Academically, it's not so good.
I wouldn't say academically it's not so good. One of the things that we're charged with is keeping track of a lot of data, which we've always done. But we get a lot of assistance from the state, and they meet with us, they provide additional professional development free of charge. So they do give all the alliance districts a lot of support in looking at data in multiple ways. So there are some positive things about being alliance.
Well,
I was in Stanford before, and Stanford was an alliance district.
But you're right.
Yeah.
I don't want to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
Please use your microphone or a microphone.
I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is an indication of districts that are struggling, but it's worth actually $17.5 million to Groton. So, like I say, we're fighting the fight on the academic front, but we're trying to hold true to the course financially.
All right.
And the other thing, one other thing, I'm kind of confused with what Representative Borderline said. She said that these scores aren't the scores that they're not the right scores.
They're not individual student scores. These are averages of the scores in the district. What I said before when I first started this presentation is we care very much about every individual student and their scores and how they're doing. We use a lot of other data too to support and look at them. And we do this growth model. So you mentioned Claude Chester. Claude Chester was one of the schools with the highest growth last year in each of the grade levels. So I have to say I'm so proud of Claude. So that's what we're looking at. So growth matters. Whether you're an advanced student, we want to see those advanced students continue to grow. If you're in the middle, we want to see you grow. If you need support, we want to see you grow. So that's what the state is looking for, and that's what the state cares about. So, and that's what we care about.
Are you done with your PowerPoint now? Thank you so much for your talk. All right, so I think we have to keep going on. We have some liaison reports. Representative Katowski? What? No report, thank you. We have Board of Ed, Representative Bordelon.
Thank you. I attended the meeting on December 10th at 6 p.m. It was at Central Office in Room 11. I thought it was quite productive. They had a presentation about the construction of the new middle school and design. There were quite a few people in attendance, which was reassuring. They discussed interior and exterior features about bus drop-off, entry points, things right down to color coordination, accessibility, and different things on that aspect on how the lay of the land would look with the sports fields. It was a very brief meeting because that did take up a lot of time. They also did review their referral tracking sheets where they're looking at items that were sent to referral and trying to execute reviewing them and moving them into the proper areas. That was basically the gist of that meeting.
Thank you. I wanted to note that I wanted to thank Representative Katowski for her service as a liaison, but she is going to pass the baton to Representative Melendez. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you for Representative Melendez for taking that on.
May I say one more thing?
Oh, sure.
I know before you were trying to get 2 people for the Town Council liaison and Board of Ed. Board of Ed meets a lot. I really could use some help. I have some personal things coming up, and it would be nice if someone could split the meetings with me, or I would take considerations, even if they could do 2 of them a month or anything like that. Currently, I can't attend all of them, and it's been a little hard. Typically, I can, but I please want to just reiterate, if it would be nice to have somebody that's willing to support it. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, you do exactly what you can do and no more. So people can watch them on TV, or I guess they can't, but they can read the minutes. Economic Development Commission, Representative Whitehouse.
Mr. Reiner covered pretty much
Okey-doke.
everything in that field.
Thank you. Golf Advisory Board, Representative Wells.
The December 3rd meeting was called for discussion, to begin discussion for setting rates and fees for using the course in the coming season. But as of November, the November revenue was down 13%. And it's almost entirely due to rain. It had 8 rain events, 5 of them on weekends, and four times the course was closed for the whole day. So it really hit the revenues. On the marketing, they're experimenting with Facebook and spent $30 on a monthly Facebook ad, which goes out to, in case any of you wondering how this works. It goes out to a selected individuals on Facebook within a 50-mile radius. And it doesn't go out all at once. It goes out a little bit at a time. So assuming some of these people would see it and go, oh, wow, and share it with their friends so the thing gets multiplied. Let's see. They've gone from 822 to 853 likes on Facebook. But a little more mysteriously, they've gone from 839 to 873 followers on Facebook. Apparently, you can follow, but you don't let everybody know you like the place.
This is true.
And the otherwise, without the details of the fees, memberships have declined on all courses in the area.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to move on. I think we have 3 items that are action items from finance, so we're going to have Representative Washington come up and read the minutes from their last meeting. What? What? Oh.
Okay, the minutes of Finance Committee meeting on November 28, 2018. The Finance Committee meeting called to order at 7:02 p.m. on November 28th by Chairperson Representative Beverly Washington. Meeting was held in the conference room at the Groton Town Police Department on Groton Long Point Road. Members present, Representative Clarence Casper, Roseanne Katowski, Robert Martin, and Wilma Lambert. Members absent, Representatives Bruce McDermott and April Hanscom. All others present, Representatives Karen Adams, Gary Wells, Sean Powers, Kate Richards, Kathy Chase, Portia Borderline, Robert Bailey, Jim Streeter, Mayor Patrice Granatowski, RTM Moderator Sima Evans, Assistant Town Manager Bob Zagami, Police Chief Louis Fazario, Lieutenant James B., Captain Stephen Sinagra, Deputy Chief Paul Gately, Public Works Director Gary Schneider, and Finance Director Cindy Landry. A quorum was declared. We had no unfinished business, new business. 2018-433-2, Capital Reserve Appropriation for Design and Construction of Police Station, UPS. Motion to approve authorization of a Capital Reserve Appropriation of $330,000 for the design and construction for the installation of uninterrupted power supply, UPS units at the police station. Motion was made by Representative Kantowski, seconded by Representative Martin. Discussion. The police department is requesting $330,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund for a new uninterrupted power supply, known as UPS, system for power coming into the police station. UPS is a big battery system that goes between the street and the police station to supply a continuous, redundant, uninterrupted, clean electrical power. This is critical to the safety systems at the police department and emergency communications center. The life safety systems include radio communications, dispatch operations, 911, phone lines, the state fiber network, the building computer network, the radio recording logs, the CCTV that's used to monitor the building and the prisoners, and related recording devices, among other things. Background information and questions answered by Police Chief Fazario, Public Works Director Gary Schneider, and Fuss and O'Neill Engineer J. Michael Callahan. Chief Fazario gave some history of the project. Current system was installed in 1999, 2000, and was expected to last 15 to 20 years. So it was not surprising that it needs replacement now. In the 2015 budget, in the 2015 budget, $110,000 was approved to replace the existing system. That turned out to be less money than bids received. We received the bids were $170,000. So in the budget, there was only $110,000, so we didn't have enough money. And the proposal was for a smaller system than was really needed. A new system was not purchased, but about half of the money was used to assess the realistic needs for a new system and to help to fix the current system. The fix is a Band-Aid repair. In June of 2015, the town received notification from the vendor that the UPS units would no longer be supported. The vendor would continue to support their maintenance. The availability of replacement parts would be in question. The condition of the UPS system was then made much worse when in May 2018, the building suffered a lightning strike prior to the arrival of Vice President Michael Pence, who was coming to speak at the Coast Guard Academy. This resulted in some major problems with communication. This highlighted the urgent public safety need for the town of Groton and communities serviced by the dispatch center. Chief Fazario stated this is a need, not a want, because of the condition of the current UPS system, and without a new system, 911 calls may be lost and services needed, not provided. Representative Borderline asked about the funds the police department received in the past year budget and why the UPS was not included. She suggested that the police department buy one UPS unit and hold off on the wall. Buy one unit this year and another next year. Representative Borderline also asked why didn't we do something sooner. She also asked the department to prioritize their budget requests. Chief Fazario responded saying that it did not seem like an emergency until May 2018. Representative Casper did some research on UPS systems and found a manufacturer that may be worth including in the process because it appeared to be less expensive and more flexible in size offerings. Mike Callahan, that's the engineer, was open to looking at the option and others. Representative Casper will forward the information. Once requirements are made, the project will be open to bids so that the manufacturer is not set in at this point. Representative Lambert asked questions about the assessment process and the type of contract to do this project. Representative Katowski asked about the money that had been slotted in 2015 and the funds still available to be used. The requested $330,000 will be used, plus the amount still left from the 2015 to fund the project. The original amount requested was $383,380. Mike Callahan reviewed the 4 options listed by Fuss and O'Neill, but strongly advised option 4, the $330,000 project, for 3 new UPS units. He also stated that the current system is operating on borrowed time. Therefore, the Public Works and Police Department are requesting additional funds for the replacement of the 2 existing UPS units and an additional UPS unit for the radio system. Representative Streeter asked what happens if the project comes in overbid. The response was that they would have to cut back. He also asked about the warranty on the units. There's a 1-year warranty, and we can purchase a service contract. There was also a question about the new radio system. The new radio system can be used once the current UPS system is fixed. The target date is December 14th, 2018. The new radio system can be used with the current UPS system. The Finance Committee members and others present at the meeting were given a tour of the police station sections where the UPS system and the radio systems are currently. The Finance Committee voted to recommend the $330,000 appropriation for this project as requested. Vote on the approval of the motion. Representative Katowski, Representative Lambert, Representative Martin, Representative Casper, and Representative Washington. So the motion was approved. The next item on the agenda was the contingency transfers, wage adjustments. Motion to approve a resolution of a one-time general contingency transfer in amount of $57,110 to cover the wage increases for the United Steelworkers, finalized contract negotiations. Motion was made by Representative Katowski and seconded by Representative Casper. The discussion. When preparing the FYE 2019 budget, the labor agreement of the United Steelworkers, that's the Parks and Public Works employees, had not been finalized. There are 48 people in this union. Based on the collective bargaining agreement approved by the town council, wage increases for the United Steelworkers are now known. The increases, which are 2%, 2.5%, and 2%, should be included in the FYE 2019 budget through a general contingency transfer. FYE 2019 appropriation for the contingency fund was $450,000. The transfer request totaling $57,110 would leave a balance of $392,890 for any unexpected expenses that might occur during the remainder of the fiscal year. In 2 years, we will be negotiating with this union again. Representative Katowski suggested that the town not announce that they are putting money in the contingency fund for raises. Representative Katowski is opposed to raises. Also, Representative Katowski stated that she saw 2 high-paying jobs on the town website, one for an outreach person paying $70,000 and another for a Groton Public Library employee paying $80,000. Both positions are needed according to the Human Resource Director, Robert Zagami. Vote to approve motion, Representative Lambert, Representative Washington, Casper, and Martin, and vote to oppose motion, Representative Katowski. Motion passed. The next item was the town property sale of a portion of Knowing School Public Gardens. Motion to approve the sale of 0.09 acre portion of parcel 260818974055 to Michael and Valerie Speller for $12,500, with funds to be deposited in a new fund to be used for cleanup of nuisance properties. Motion made by Representative Lambert, seconded by Representative Martin. Discussion. The town council received a request from Mike Speller to purchase 0.09 acre section of the Knowing School Public Property, Garden property. Mr. Speller owns property next door to the Noank School Public Garden property. Mr. Speller received an appraisal of the said property. The property is appraised at $11,700. There will be some costs incurred by the town, including legal fees, title search, and newspaper publication costs. The town manager is proposing the sale of the property for $12,500. The Town of Groton Planning Commission disapproved the sale of the property. The town council approved the sale of the property with a 2/3 vote. Vote to approve this motion, Representative Casper, Washington, Lambert, Martin, and Katowski. The motion was approved. Consideration of committee referral items as per referral list. Representative Katowski will make referrals at the regular RTM meeting. Motion to adjourn at 10:10 p.m. by Representative Casper, second by Representative Martin.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept those minutes? Representative Adams, second by Casper. No, I need a second before we, thank you. Okay, that can come as soon as we get it on the table. Thank you. So Representative Monahan seconded it. Representative Casper, did you have a correction?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, I never stated that the inverter, as an example, inverter for a UPS system was less expensive.
Oh, okay.
It was an example of a modular UPS approach.
Okay. I'll strike it from the minutes.
Any other changes to those?
I wrote that down now.
All right, is there, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor of accepting the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion. 27 people, I hear, left. All right, thank you. Would you like to read your first motion?
What's the first one? I didn't bring the agenda.
UPS.
UPS?
Let's see.
Okay.
I think it was the steelworker thing.
The raises, right?
Contingency trade wages, transfer wage
Okay.
adjustment.
I have to find it. Okay. Whereas the town charter provides for general contingency transfers during the year, and whereas during FYE 2019 budget deliberations, the labor agreement for the United Steelworkers, Parks/Public Works employees had not been settled, and the FYE 2018 wage increases were not included in a department's FYE 2019 budget. Whereas wage increases for the United Steelworker, Parks, and Public Works are now known and should be incorporated into a department's FYE 2019 budget through a general contingency transfer, and resolved that $57,110 is transferred from the general fund contingency function 1074 to the following general fund departments functions and referred to the RTM for approval. And so it says function 1035 Public Works, $45,947. Function 1064 Parks and Recreation, $11,163, for a total of $57,110.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is that a second, Representative Katowski? Is that a second? Second. Thank you. All right. We have a motion on the floor for a general contingency transfer of $57,110,000. Sorry, probably said that wrong. It's late. Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I do not support this transfer, and I don't think that the RTM should either. Here are two important reasons why. Every year, the town approves a certain amount of money during budget time in the contingency line item for raises. How is it efficient or effective or wise negotiating if the unions know the money is waiting for contracts to be settled in the contingency fund? This makes no sense to me. Also, taxes in Groton were increased 18.9% in the past 4 years, as you have heard me state many times. We cannot afford the generous salaries and benefits that the town of Groton and Board of Ed employees enjoy. During the Finance Committee meeting, it was noted that there were 2 highly paid job openings on the town website, one at the library and one at Parks and Rec, even though I thought there was a hiring freeze in place. My suggestion is not to fill these 2 positions for approximately $150,000, excluding benefits. Note, I am not suggesting eliminating any employees. Not replacing these 2 positions would easily cover the $57,100 for employee raises. If we are going to have employees with over-the-top salaries and benefits, then we will just have to have fewer of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this motion? Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Could I please ask Mr. Zagami to come up and give us some information about this, the contract negotiation, for the benefit of the body?
There he goes.
Good evening, Bob Zagami, Assistant Town Manager, Director of Human Resources. Questions? Yes, sir.
Representative Streeter?
Does the $57,110, is that the entire package?
No, that's the contingency. They budgeted, I believe it was around 2% but we ended up with a 2.5% on one of them, so that it becomes actually, we figured 2%, but then 2.5% for one of them. So it is not the whole package, no.
What would be the value of the entire package over the 3 years?
I don't have that number with me.
Can you give us an approximate?
No.
Why not?
I just don't have that number with me. I can tell you what the benefits cost, what the savings on the benefits cost, but I don't have the total because there is we certainly don't know how much overtime's going to come up or how much there's going to be cost for labor and everything. There's no way to make an evaluation on that. Last year, what really sunk the public works and the Parks and Rec was the fact that we had a lot of snow. The snow really is what tears the budget apart when it comes to those two. So it's hard to really project what the contract's going to cost.
I'm just not satisfied with the answer because the taxpayers are paying the dollars for this. We should know what the entire package, the value of the entire package was. We negotiated. We probably went in and said, okay, don't give them more than 2%, 2.5%, or whatever. And here's the dollar value we want to keep the ceiling at. So I see a figure of 57,110 that we're going to transfer in, but I want to know what else did we pay them? Because the taxpayers are asking the same thing. How much is this costing us? So I would like to have an answer by the next thing. And I might even suggest that we put this on hold because you can't answer that question. Okay?
Yes.
Representative Bordelon?
I also want to agree with Representative Streeter. I think it's important to have all information so that we can adequately, we're putting numbers forward, making decisions on behalf of different districts and people in the community, and it's important to have proper numbers to properly assess what's going on, to see the big picture. And I understand that you said, during snowstorms and that, but other towns I have seen do it adequately, and we do have a lot of overtime numbers in this town, and there could be a way that we could freeze some of that and adequately plan and prepare for that moving forward. So I also would agree that I don't feel we have the proper information to vote on this tonight, in my opinion.
Well, I'd be more than happy to get you an estimate on that. That it would be an estimate. Because labor wages move up and down with according to how much work work is out there. If there's more paving out there that year, if there's more snow plowing that year, if there's a lot of breakdowns at the water pollution, you know, if there's trails to be maintained, there's a lot of different factors that go that we won't have that. When we're looking at the percentages of increases, one of the things we look at, we don't just look at and say, well, we think we can make it at this amount. We're also looking at arbitration. We look at the arbitration awards because we know that in the event we go to arbitration, we know pretty much where those numbers are going to lie. So what we do is we kind of work toward there. During the negotiations, as I've said before, one of the tough parts we have is this was the last bargaining group, to actually go on to the high deductible health plan. And that did take a lot of talk. You can see that we actually were like 2017, we were actually expired in that contract. So that just tells you how long it took, almost a year, just to get things in place to actually negotiate that. That was a tough thing to overcome. So that was, when you're buying back and forth, that's the quid pro quo, and that's probably that is the last bargaining unit to go on that health plan. But it was critical that we go on the high deductible health plan because being under the PPO, you are now assessed with the highest price you can pay for your health insurance because it's taken into consideration how much cost it could possibly be. When you have a high deductible health plan, you now kind of put on the consumer how much, which is all of us employees, how much it's going to cost us as far as trying to take care of things when we have emergency visits or something like that we want to say, we're not going to the emergency room, we're going to wait and see if we can make a doctor's appointment or go to a doc in a box locally or those things, because then you save tons of money. So it brings us, the health was really the most important thing. The whole entire negotiations, we spent almost all of our time on two issues. One was the health and welfare, naturally. The second was the second issue was wages, naturally, and then the third piece was on CDLs, whether or not the town, who has no ability to produce training for CDLs anymore, we can't do that with the new state regulations. We have to go about hiring outside. So where we were linked to have to provide CDL training, we now had to go out. We built a ceiling on that of $5,000 so that we lowered how many people could actually go out and be trained.
Let us know what CDL, maybe everyone else knows what it is.
That's a commercial driver's license.
Thank you.
So those were the three issues that we really focused on. This is not your normal negotiation when you've got health care. Health care and the high deductible plan has probably been in about 20 years. I come from the private sector previously, and that's probably been in 20 years. So here we are the last couple of years now getting high deductible health plans in. So we're not talking about the meat and potatoes when we're looking at a contract. We're looking at a trade of probably two issues. And to back it up, it's not like we're pulling numbers out of the air. We know basically if we have to go to binding arbitration, anytime we go to binding arbitration, in case anyone doesn't know, you have your numbers, the union has their numbers, and it's one or the other. It's not cutting splitting the baby in half or something like that. So we know pretty much where we have to land in the event we go to arbitration. So even if you go to arbitration and you win, you still spend $20,000, $30,000 extra just to go there and buy a ticket there.
So following on Representative Streeter's question, how many individuals are covered under this Function 1035 and then 1064?
We're talking about how many employees?
48 total?
There's
for
48
both?
total, yeah.
How many are in the Parks and Rec?
I think there's about 4 or 5.
Thank you. Representative White.
But I think that's a fair question to get a close estimate of what that cost is.
My purpose is the fact that when budget time comes, the manager, and now you, the assistant manager, will provide us line items, and you will say, this is the salary we need for these employees. The overtime is a separate account. What I'm asking is how much is the dollar value of the 2%, the 2.5%, and and the 2% over those 3 years. That's what I'm asking. The overtime is a separate account.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse, we do have a small slew of people here.
So the raise, are those annual raises they're getting? Is it like 2% every year, or is that?
Yeah, that's an annual raise.
Okay, so it's matching.
Pardon me? Per the contract,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's matching the rate of inflation, basically 2% to match the
Right.
2% inflation rate. All right, and the overtime, is that just kind of the nature of seasonality, or is that because of understaffing, or what?
Well, I think one of the things, you have a large group at the water pollution, which they have their emergencies there and everything, where they have call-in pay to go back and such, and working overtime there. So that's an issue of overtime. The other one is the snow plowing. Sometimes you can get someone actually working 20 hours in a day of driving plus their regular job, because we don't know when it's going to snow, and we don't keep other people on for just snow plowing or bring people in. Those people are working already, and they turn to snow plowing. And in the summertime, that's when they turn to paving the streets and repairing all the streets and, clearing out everything from catch basins to all the public works pieces.
And so that's just the nature of dealing with snow? Is that how most towns do it, that they have the regular staff and then pay them time and a half to
I
plow
don't,
all night? Or?
Well, I mean, paying time and a half that's a rule for,
right.
That's a DOL rule.
Right, but I mean, having them doing their regular job and paying them time and a half as opposed to reallocating resources.
I don't know how the other towns operate, to be quite honest on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Richards? Could you pass her the microphone, please?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Actually, you already asked my question. I was wondering about the number of employees in the union. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Monahan?
I'd like
just pause a moment and we'll have
Just
Mr. Burt respond.
Just looking through, we're kicking around numbers as we say here. That 57,000 covers 2% back pay for, it's a 3-year contract, 18, 19, and 20. The first year is a 2%. This pays that back pay as well as a 0.5% of the current year because we had budgeted in 2%. So when you look at it that way for the 2.5, you're probably talking about 125,000 ballpark for the total amount for the 3 years. And then that doesn't take into account though any savings from healthcare, just for wage increase. And just a little further comment on Bob about the arbitration. Every month I get an update from CCM on where arbitration awards are coming out. For this year, the lowest amount awarded for any one particular year is 2%. The highest is 2.5%. The average is 2.33%. So that's the range. If you go to arbitration, you're not going to have a year under 2%. You're not going to have a year over 2.5% either. You're going to be somewhere in that ballpark. So.
Thank you. Representative Monahan?
Madam Moderator, through you, Mr. Burt, am I correct that we're being asked to approve transfer of funds? The contract's been signed.
Right.
So we're not voting on whether or not we're going to approve the funds that have been negotiated through the town. That's a done deal. The only issue is approving money, moving money from the contingency fund into the regular budget. So the town could take up Representative Katowski's suggestion of maybe not hiring other people and therefore not, can we delay transferring the funds to another time?
Representative Chase? Oh, okay. I didn't catch the question mark, sorry.
In terms of the library one is needed, of course, the position being filled is the person who became the director. That management level position is needed. We do regularly review these and look to see if we can go without. At this point, those two positions aren't ones we would go without. We have several levels that goes through before it gets approved. But something could come up, I don't know. But in the long run, we have to account for it, and we want to make it clear where that money's coming from. So.
Sorry. Representative Chase?
Thank you. Do you know off the top of your head how much savings on the health plan?
Yeah, we figured probably around 140,000 around there.
And so does that cover some of these raises?
It depends, because when it comes to health insurance, that refers to all of the premiums paid. The real driver in the health insurance is the claims. It doesn't take much with this size population for a couple of claims that you can come up with that can take and, throw the entire savings off. That happens. Because we're joined also with the Board of Ed, so either one of us having a poor year, we're running well now so far as, matter of fact, last year we ran well too. We were running in the 80 percentile of expected claims right now, and the Board of Ed, I'm not sure where they are, but they're actually even better than that. But that's the key. Plus, there'll always be, we don't know what the rates are going to be with Anthem until they hit us with the rates. So, the big thing is get the high deductible plan in so that you can lower the premiums and the overall cost. And also to make people understand, our employees, that they have a share in this to try to lower their cost. If they have a $4,000 deductible if they're a family, but we do cede 50% of that. But now to come up with that $2,000, that means that they've got to come up with $2,000 on their own on the high deductible health plan also during that year. So that kind of makes you think twice before you go to, how you plan, whether it's buying your prescriptions. A lot of us that have other plans probably just go out to the drugstore and just figure, okay, this is my plan, I'll pay my copay, and that's it. But no one knows how high those prices really are. Now, when you're assessed that you've got to come up with that $2,000 on your prescriptions, all of a sudden you're starting to say, hey, look, you know something? I got to start figuring out how I can get a cheaper product here. And we have a couple of ways we do that. One of the ways we do it is you can go through Express Scripts, which I'm sure everybody's heard of. They are a mailing, so that if you get 3 months of a maintenance drug, you'll get a lower price. But if you follow that further, if you have a huge claim there that you've got to pay a large prescription, then there's actually ways that you can actually contact Express Scripts and connect with your doctor. It's a lot more work. But I've seen prescriptions for $500 a month come down to $26 a month by choosing their list of...
I'm going to cut in there. Great overview.
Sorry.
Hopefully we'll see some savings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one more question.
Sominex is now out of business.
I have one more question. Did the unions make any concessions in order to get these raises? And if so, what were they?
Well, their big concession was to take on a high deductible health plan.
Right.
That was their concession.
Thank you.
Representative Casper?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Moderator. I kind of feel that some of the discussion here has been actually trying to micromanage a town employee rather than deal with the real question. I mean, are we going to transfer the money or not? And that has nothing to do with the negotiations, whether there should be raises, whether it shouldn't be raises. What the deal is done, and now, let's just move on. And I must live in a different town than some of the other people here, because I've got numbers for residential, the taxes on residential property going back to when the last reassessment was done, when it first took effect. And over that 5-year period, I come up with an average increase of 3.23% per year. So I must live, someone else, and that would be on the residential property, the base rate, not counting sewers or fire districts.
Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet who wishes to speak on this issue? All right, I'll take one last comment from Representative Katowski.
We've talked about this threat of arbitration in the past, and we've just had to agree to disagree. My question to you is, when was the last time Groton actually went to arbitration?
Are we talking about negotiations?
Arbitration.
Right. Arbitration for negotiations.
Arbitration.
Since I've been,
Yeah.
We've gone to arbitration on other things than negotiations, is what he's getting at. There's different things we can go to arbitration
Right,
on.
but
Yeah.
it seems like we're using the threat of arbitration as a way to keep the salaries high and the raises high. But my question is, have we ever gone to arbitration for raises? And
No, not since I've been
Thank
here.
you.
But,
Thank
but,
you.
but perfectly willing if we're not within the range where we know we're going to end up anyways, so.
Thank you. So now we have a motion on the floor. I think I'd like to bring it to a vote. So this is resolved that $57,110 is transferred from the general fund contingency function 1074 to the following general fund departments functions and referred to the RTM for approval, and that's function 1035 for $45,947 and 1064 for $11,163 for that total of $57,110. So all in favor of transferring this funding, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, did you get those? Any abstentions? All right, and Bordelon. Two abstentions, wasn't it?
Two.
Yeah. 20 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstentions, so that motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, the next resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation of $330,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund unassigned fund balance. Whereas funds were approved in the FYE 2016 capital improvement budget for the replacement of the uninterruptible power supply, UPS units, and whereas the project was bid and the only bid received was rejected by the town for insufficient funds, and whereas a detailed engineering review was conducted in August of 2019, which investigated all, how could that be 2019?
2018.
2018, okay. So you might want to correct that on that whereas form. Whereas a detailed engineering review was conducted in August of 2018, which investigated all options for the replacement of these units, taking into account current and future needs, and whereas the engineering review strongly recommended option 4, whose advantages are that it addresses the need to replace the existing units, it maintains redundancy for 911 dispatch functions, provides redundancy for the new radio base stations, and ensures that the electrical system remains configured such that a single point of failure will not disable the electrical system, and whereas Public Works and police departments concur with option 4 and has made that recommendation to the town council, therefore be it resolved that a supplemental appropriation of $330,000 be made from the Capital Reserve Fund unassigned fund balance for a new FYE 2019 capital project uninterruptible power supply.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second. Oh, Michael Whitehouse. Thank you. So is there any discussion on this? Representative Pasqualini.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess it's ended up more of a statement than a question. I am in support of it. My problem is that we approved $100,000 in a CIP for a specific purpose.
110, I think.
100, yeah. I don't believe money should go anywhere else except for that specific purpose that we pass it for. I don't care if you try to bend the rule to say, well, it's still about the radio or it's still about this. We approve it for a specific project. The project can't be done no monies get spent. So that is what I feel. And that's why there's always a problem of approving CIPs, because there's always money left over kept somewhere. And then it gets used or moved to somewhere else. We're doing it for a specific project. That's all the money should go for. Because now it looks like it went to some maintenance work, into what we budgeted that in their budget. So they use that money for something else. And that I have a problem with.
Well, I believe, and please, Mr. Berger, Schneider, correct me, I believe that money went for the design, that Fuss and O'Neill report that's included in your minutes.
That's correct. If you look on page 5, that was the recap of both the 16 and the construction costs. So we tried to be as clear as possible. But the money just was spent on the UPS at the police station.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't know if I have a question or a statement as well. I just think personally in this town, I understand that all towns are in a budget crisis, but everything that comes before us so far, coming from you, Mr. Schneider, is urgent. The tanks last year, now this. We need to work in a more effective way in this town where we are collaborating with all of our functioning entities here, anyway, making sure that, we've known about this for quite some time, a random strike with Pence in town, it just gets to be, it unfortunately becomes a bit comical at times, and I mean no disrespect, but it's really hard as a newcomer coming on and seeing how we've gotten to where we are today, and I feel that we can operate in a much more effective way. We talk about TIF, we talk about this, we give the school issues, the way that we present things. I feel when you started spending, and some might call this micromanaging, I call it education and understanding where the money goes. When you started using the allocated funds that were allocated several years ago, that would have been the appropriate time to come before the RTM and say that you were starting to use those funds because this was coming down the pipe. It just seems like it's not really transparent and forthcoming. And I would like to get out of the urgency window. I know that there's a lot of newcomers here. I know Chief, was not here during the original time when this happened, but we can't keep bringing things forward in its urgency. We need to come up with a much more effective way to present items to the town and the taxpayers so that there's a little bit more support. Is it a need or is it a want? This is a need, I get that, but there's got to be a better process. Looking at this, the design and everything, we talked about 3 UPSs is my understanding, correct? That there's 3 that's being recommended under that plan, and we currently only operate with 2. So do we really need 3 right now? Can we get 2 and then get the 3rd? I know there's a discrepancy in the numbers, but I feel like we always, when we present, the design's going to be made, so the patent will be there, but when we present with the most extreme always, not what's the most reasonable sometimes. So I'm just urging the town as a whole to really start to look at this and maybe do a better job at monitoring our systems and things in this town that become critical. Thank you.
Yes, please. Chief Pissarro.
I appreciate what you said, Representative Bordelon. And one thing that I do want to assure you, and I think that the fact that you've got 2 department heads sitting here in front of you speaks to the fact that we are in concert with one another. I don't know if that were the case before. I can't speak to what happened prior to my appointment as chief, but I can tell you as far as this project goes, we're in lockstep with one another. Formerly, up until last year about this time, we had another entity, and this isn't to pass the buck or anything, it was just the way the system was. We had a separate department that also managed this system. Shortly, since that time, the police department has been more involved in this and certainly has taken the lead on stuff that happens within our facility in concert with the Public Works Director. So I think your point is well taken. We certainly appreciate that, making sure that we're on the same page. I can assure you we are. Maybe that wasn't the case in the past, but everybody that's working on this project has a common goal. The fact you brought up, why is there a 3rd one? Since this time, since May, when Fuss and O'Neill was brought on board, they made some recommendations. If you look at the packet that was provided by Director Schneider, you'll see exactly what that was. And those of you who had the opportunity to visit the police station last week saw that there are systems that currently exist within the department that are not connected to this uninterrupted power source, and really should be. They're critical systems. They're not just police radios, but they're radio systems that support the rest of the town and other partner agencies that work with the town and that are supported by the communication center. So all of them, the goal is to have everything connected to this, so we're not piecemealing things, that we're not having things that are susceptible to failure and that do not have redundant systems connected to them, so that if there is an emergency like we've experienced in the past, as a public safety agency, we need to ensure continuity of operations, and that is what was designed by the person that was brought on board. So I do appreciate and want to express to you, at least from the people sitting at the table here, we're pretty committed to working with each other and making sure that we have a common interest and common objectives.
Can I just follow that up?
Sure.
And then looking at the CIPs that we just approved, because we just did approve a hefty amount of money under the last budget cycle. One of them being the wall. Is there any possibility that $50,000 could be put on hold to go to this urgent must-have system to decrease that 50,000 is $50,000 to make that 330 go down? Because my understanding of the wall is still not happened.
Certainly that's the case, but I also want to address something, and Representative Pasqualini just mentioned it. You appropriated money for a certain cause. I don't want to be put in a position, and I've had this discussion with council members saying, hey, what happened to the money that we gave you for this? The money hasn't been spent. The money still exists. We're not using it for other purposes. Certainly when it comes to the police department, we're using it for its intended purpose. If there's a decision made by others, again, there was a process that we went through last year during the budget to say, hey, this is what this money's earmarked for. The reason those monies haven't been spent also is to be fiscally responsible. We've done things consecutively. The council and the RTM appropriated money for a radio system last year. We've just completed that system. In fact, I can report to you today that the system is operational. It is connected to one of these power sources right now. As of December 4th, it was operational. We were expecting it December 14th. The vendors came in, did it earlier. So, certainly if, we haven't spent that money. If it means moving stuff around, I don't necessarily oppose that. But this is a critical system that needs to happen.
Thank you. I was curious, this was something that I heard, but I'm not sure I know the answer. Presumably we have insurance on the building and the items within it. Has the insurer been contacted since this happened in May of this year? And how much will they pay for to cover the damage?
Everything that we found out through the building, through our inspections, and from what we feel from a lightning strike, maybe for the next up to a year of the critical systems we have up there, even small systems, the range hood in the dispatch kitchen, they have a small kitchenette there, the range hood just died. And what there was was overstress from the lightning strike. The answer is yes. Everything that we find out that's remotely electronic or electrical, we fill out the inspection reports and everything else, and we send them down to risk management. So it goes down to the town, it goes to our insurance agent. There is a deductible. I do believe it's $10,000 per event. But the thing is that we will record everything, we'll report everything, we'll seek any reimbursement we can from our coverage of insurance. But that then comes back into the general fund. It doesn't come back into this. So there's money coming in. That would be revenue. It shows up in a revenue line somewhere, but this is an expenditure.
It would be lovely to know when that happens. I think this body would be interested in that.
If I may add to that too, and we've had meetings with our insurance company. We've told them they've gone and done an assessment. A lot of the radio equipment that was damaged has already been replaced through our vendor. So that is stuff that, because it's critical systems, has to be replaced. They've got a tally of that, but I would also, just suggest to you that if someone has damage to their home or to their car, if they get into a car accident, it's not necessarily going to buy them a brand new car, right? So if you have a 1988 Buick, it's not going to buy a 2018 Porsche. So there's going to be a delta there where there's some money that isn't recouped because of the damage.
Yeah. Is that understood? Representative Chase.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, but you asked my question. It was about the insurance.
Representative Whitehouse.
All right. So three things I want to touch on briefly. So first up, with the original CIP, was all the money for that 110 spent towards the UPS system, or was it spent on other things as well?
It was spent on the UPS system. It was bid once as a document that I prepared here, explained. So we put out a bid specification. The bids came in, one was unresponsive, and the other one was it was more money, so I rejected the bids for insufficient funds. So there was some money expended there. The second thing is, then we called Fuss, and we then used part of that money, that's why there's $56,000 expended, for this current design. We know the systems have to be replaced, so it is for the engineering to replace the system. So they're all spent on the UPS units at the police station.
So the money was spent on what the CIP was meant to do, there wasn't enough to finish the job, which is why we're
correct.
It wasn't entirely spent, if you look at
Right,
the
no,
minutes.
I get that. Yeah. All right, because it does seem like it would have been good to, obviously I wasn't on the RTM at that time, seems it would have been good to come and report, we don't have enough to finish the job, but we're doing a portion of it, expecting a future CIP. The second thing I want to point out is one thing I'm noticing in the cycle of government is that when we come, the town comes, says, okay, we need $300,000 for a project to do it right. And then the representatives say, we're protecting the taxpayer money, we're only going to give you $100,000. And then a year or 2 or 3 years later, come back, ask for the rest of the money, and the representatives say, why didn't you ask for the right amount of money in the first place? And usually the staff says, we did, you cut it, and now we're back. So I just want to point out that I've seen this pattern repeated over and over and over again just this year, that I think very often a lot of that responsibility lies with us in nickel and diming these projects that we do need, because I suspect that if we authorized the right amount of money for the project in 2016, 15, whenever it was, then we would already have a new UPS system and it wouldn't be an emergency. But oftentimes you end up having to come to us and say, this is on fire, and we say, well, how on fire is it? Is the whole thing on fire, or is it just the garage? Because I don't know if we need the garage, and it might not spread. So just something to think about philosophically when we're looking at these issues. And the last thing, something that did concern me, is in the information sheet here, it says, talking about the emergency management director retiring, personnel inheriting this responsibility were not aware of the current condition of the UPS system, nor the intricacies of how it was designed and configured over the years. Which makes me wonder, like, if the notes were kept in, like, pieces of paper in his wallet, or was it all in memory? How are there not, well, the one thing people criticize about government is all the paperwork and all the forms and records and everything. How did we not have records and forms and documents about the maintenance and status and construction of this piece of equipment?
There were those written forms and inspection reports. They were forwarded to him, and he managed the systems. Mm-hmm. So there was maintenance done. We had service agreements yearly done. They would come and check. They would report back to him. Mm-hmm. And so it's in his files somewhere, so he never reported out. Maybe he didn't have a large enough voice in 2015, when the bids came in, I had to go back and ask for more money. We don't know. I mean, he was a good guy working with the budgets he had and the personnel he had. But there were reports. We can dig them up, but it's, this team right here was assigned to work. I'm responsible for the power through these units to the dispatch panels and to the radios, and then the chief's responsible for all of the other operational needs. And it was something that we did not have.
All right, so is it just, it's somewhere in the files and no one's dug them out?
Somewhere's in the files.
Organized well,
and we could ask Lieber to dig up their files. They keep records for at least 10 or 15 years.
Okay, so the information's there. It's just a librarian problem, not that there isn't knowledge. Okay.
Institutional memory is an important thing. Probably undervalued. Representative Mello Miller.
Thank you. I'm not sure who this question would go to. If let's say the system fails before, let's say we don't approve it tonight, is this a liability? So
yes.
So theoretically, could the town get sued? Let's say if they weren't able to call 911 or something to that degree.
There's always a possibility that the town could be sued for something if we fail to act, if we don't respond to a need. Is that a possibility? Sure it is.
In that regard, is there a requirement with the state of Connecticut that we have backup systems? Or are you aware of any
We are,
requirements?
yeah, we are a PSAP, which is a primary station answering point, where 911 calls come in. We handle it for the whole of Groton. We function as that, so if anyone in any of Groton proper calls 911, if they're involved in a car accident, if somebody needs medical care, if there's a need for police, wherever that may be within the borders of Groton, the call initially comes to our facility. So there is a 911 component where it comes in, and then we dispatch it to police and fire in the town, or we transfer it to the city of Groton for police services there. So, you know, it's a critical component. We also have other systems that are enumerated in here, dispatch consoles. So, you know, we need to make sure that those continue to operate. And don't forget, when we're operating, we're not operating, you know, during 70-degree beautiful weather all the time. It's a 24/7 operation. Bad weather, snow, rain, you know, hurricanes, snowstorms, all that stuff. When people's power gets lost, who are they calling? They're going to call 911. If there's an emergency, they call 911. And a lot of times, those are during those times where they really need the assistance, and services across the town may be degraded because of weather conditions. So we don't have the luxury of saying, no, we can't operate. There are some mechanisms in place where we have backups. But I think what you've seen in the report that you have is the system that's being designed is redundant, so that we don't have those problems, and we try to plan against losing those services so we can dispatch fire, police, EMS, and handle phone calls and continue our operations.
I apologize. Maybe I didn't hear the answer to your question. So is it a law for the state of Connecticut that we have, that you have a backup system for 911?
We have an obligation, yes, through the
Okay.
state, because being a PSAP, yes.
So if we do not fund this, we would also be theoretically breaking the law or breaking that agreement?
To operate as a PSAP, we get financial compensation from the state that comes to the town.
So we would be in violation, so we would not.
We may risk some of that, yeah.
So we would be in risk of getting some financial assistance from the state?
Of losing some.
Okay. And then also, just a suggestion, you were mentioning with insurance purposes that you do go and claim these things. I think it would be helpful for this body if you could, and I know this is even more work for you gentlemen, but that you could account for that stuff, so that during budget season, when we see that you're asking for more radios or whatever, that we do see that you are trying to be accountable and to try and replace things with, you know, from insurance purposes, as you suggested with the radios, because then that would maybe make it easier for us to approve funds if we know that you are trying within that regard. Okay.
We're happy to provide that. That goes through risk management. We did provide the information to the insurance adjusters. You know, ultimately, they'll furnish a report. I have not seen it yet.
I understand, but just to the RTM body in itself, so that we know how much you're recuperating from that loss, and so how much is actually coming from the taxpayers. I'm sure the taxpayers would be interested too, just to make sure.
I did ask for that just before.
I
if you didn't
apologize.
hear
I'm
that.
sorry.
I
Thank
did.
you.
Representative Monahan?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. In the Fuss and O'Neill engineering report attached, it says that the original power system included a fair amount of redundancy, including, and one of the things is robust lightning protection and grounding systems. So the question is, does the new system of $330,000 include robust lightning protection that works, or are we just attributing this to Vice President Pence's visit?
No. Madam Moderator, if you'd allow us to bring up our consultant, I think he probably could speak to that better than Gary or I could.
Ed, if I may add, Mike, keep it short. He's an
I guess my
engineer.
reputation precedes me. Sorry. That's an excellent.
Please use the microphone.
I'm sorry. That's an excellent question. The lightning strike at the police station was a direct hit on the radio tower, and the system components, particularly the lightning protection, for the most part worked as designed and installed. There's a very robust grounding system, and there are what are called transient surge suppression devices. Those actually all, for the most part, worked. A good deal of the electrical components in the facility were protected. It was primarily the radio base stations and equipment that failed. The UPSs, which initially we did not think were affected by the lightning strike, we now believe were, but that's principally because those were aged components and were likely more susceptible. So the new UPSs will have robust surge suppression, and we believe that the grounding and lightning surge suppression system is adequate and appropriate. Yes, I'm not attributing and would not attribute this to the Vice President's visit.
Thank you. Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess I'm a little bit frustrated because we paid for this system once, and when we needed it, it didn't work. So with the diesel, you have a diesel generator, right, as your...
Correct.
So what are we doing differently? And I read where you're going to go out and check the voltage on the starter system to make sure once a week that's okay, right?
Correct.
But see, that wouldn't have fixed the problem you had because you had the failure in between the startups, right? I mean, this thing's been working fine for 5 years, and you know, within a couple of days of this lightning strike, it went out.
That was right. The trickle charger to the battery failed, and so the batteries weren't charged. So the previous, just before Vice President's, the lightning strike, let's use that one, came here, it worked. So what we didn't have is a way of checking whether the batteries, you know, are fully charged. So we're going to place those components on the outside. It will be part of our weekly check of that generator. So we'll make sure that the batteries are up to snuff that it can start the generator.
But you had a weekly check.
We had
on the previous generator.
And all it was is the generator fired off, the power transferred, it ran for so many minutes, and then the power went back. So the transfer switch worked, the diesel fired, the generator worked, transfer switch worked, power was transferred, everything was going real nice, and then we'd shut it back down again. So it was that thing that there was nothing to check, probably a small component, but had the biggest impact to the generator, which was a set of batteries. Once we jump-started the diesel, it fired off. So what we want to do is to have a meter out there so we can check the batteries themselves, and it'll be a physical check. We'll go out there once a week when we start the generator. So that component will be taken care of.
What kind of periodic maintenance do you do on the diesel?
By service contract, both the genset and the diesels are maintained either by Cummings, or we go out to bid. So there's a couple contractors out there. All of our generators are serviced once a year, the genset and the diesel itself.
How long does it take for the generator to come up to speed, the diesel to come up to speed?
I do believe 8
to
10 seconds. 8 to 10 seconds of transfer of power.
So why do we need to have uninterruptible power supplies that will go for hours if we need relatively, really minutes?
Normal running condition, absolutely. Generator doesn't work. What this showed here, what happens when that generator does not work? It could be because it doesn't start. It could be because it's 20 years old and throws a rod through the side. It could be the genset, which was checked 8 months ago, all of a sudden just doesn't want to generate enough power. It's that it's a point of failure. So that's why the UPSs, and the chief can talk to a little bit more, have a certain run time so he can enact his alternate plan.
I just want to make sure we understand, because you've been talking about how important this is, and yet when we needed it, it didn't work. And so I guess we need to think this through and make sure, because even though when you talk about going out and checking the battery on a weekly basis, if it fails in between that time, you can still have the same problem occur, right?
I don't know if Mr. Callahan could add to this, but the way it was explained to me, and I'm not an engineer, I've learned more about UPSs in the last 6 months than I collective 40 some odd years before that. Think about when you shut your computer, if you lose power to some of the systems we have, our CAD, our dispatch, our computer-aided dispatch, all our systems that we have that are electronically connected, our radio components, if we lose power to that and they shut down, there's a reboot time. So they don't come back on instantly. They're essentially computers. They have to go through that reboot. It takes time to work up. So whether it's 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, once they're off, they're off. There needs to be that continuity from street power to generator. I hope I'm explaining that right, Mike, am I? So just think about it in your house. If you shut the computer off and you go back to turn it on, or even your TV, there's a delay before the time you press that button and it actually becomes operational. And those are things that we can't lose in the public safety sector. So we don't want to drop that 911 call. We don't want to miss, sending someone to a critical incident, or wait until everything gets up while there's a real delay between when we need the power and when we have the power. Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand. Thank you very much.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question for for Gary Schneider. Isn't there like a go, no-go alarm for the condition of the battery on the generator?
No.
There should be a...
There should be, correct, and that's what we will be doing. There will be something there. There'll be a physical check for the condition of the batteries, absolutely.
Well, besides just a physical check, something that's automatic indication.
Yes, no, absolutely. What I'm saying, a physical check is a person will come down there, instead of it transmitting to our smartphone, that we have on some of our buildings, DDC, this will be someone going out there. They'll be checking the oil, very critical, checking if there's any vandalism on the unit itself. It is outside, but it is locked down. And then checking if those batteries are good, they've been charged, so they can fire off the next time. And then, of course, the biggest check is when it fires off. But yes.
All right. And I have another question. If you're not able to answer it, the engineer possibly could. With batteries, especially a large bank of batteries, is there there's a possibility that hydrogen buildup, and with anything 1.5%, well, that's the danger zone.
I'll have Mike answer that. I'm a civil.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so is the question relevant to the batteries that start the generator or the batteries in the UPS?
UPS.
The batteries in the UPS will be sealed lead-acid batteries, so hydrogen won't be an issue.
Although they are sealed, there is ventilation coming from those batteries. There is a port.
Yeah, there is a port, and the port only allows a very, very small exchange of either air or hydrogen, and the amount of discharge for the hydrogen is I don't want to say minuscule, but it's small enough so it doesn't present a fire hazard.
Well, in a room that's not properly ventilated, that hydrogen will build up, and that's a possible danger of explosion. Has that been investigated?
We'll certainly look at that.
And also outboard ventilation from the room where the UPSs are located. There has to be always a constant form of ventilation on a battery, whether it's in use or not. Has that been looked at?
Yeah, we have not looked at that, but we will.
Okay, and the third question is a monitoring system that indicates the presence of hydrogen, such as a percentage meter. Has that been looked at?
We have not, but we would certainly consider that.
Okay, those are three serious issues that could be a danger that should be looked at.
Yep,
that's what I recommend.
Yep, those are excellent suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bailey. That was very nice. Representative Streeter?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Okay, when we first entered into this proposal or request for the funding, I had a lot of questions. And at the Finance Committee meeting, the chief was there. But more importantly, the representative from Fuss O'Neill was there. He answered a lot of questions. Between the chief and the engineer, the questions were answered. I had follow-up questions, and I want to thank the town manager for providing those. And they are in this package that the town manager provided us. Very detailed thing. But no matter what, I mean, we kicked it down the road, fine. Somebody didn't tell anybody anything, all right, or they're locked in a drawer, the reports, or we didn't have the funding. It doesn't make a difference. We need it. So I'm proposing that we just get it over with, get it done, all right, and stop putting the public at risk for this thing. Therefore, I'm going to move the question.
All right, there's a motion, and it's been seconded, and it's not debatable. Casper. You didn't, did you second it? Oh, no, sorry, Merritt, sorry. All right, so there's a motion to call the question. All in favor? And that takes a 2/3 vote, I'll just say. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? I'm voting no. How many people do we have? Okay. Any abstentions? One. We only have 25 members that I count. Oh, you're right, I missed me. All right. Did it pass?
Yeah, 19-6-1.
All right, so that passes. So we have a motion on the floor. It's a resolution authorizing a supplemental appropriation of $330,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund, unassigned fund balance, and it's for the purchase of a UPS, an uninterrupted power supply, for the police station. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more on the floor, one more that will shortly be on the floor.
Okay. Okay. The next resolution is the sale of town property. Whereas the town of Groton is the owner of real property, commonly referred to as Knowing Gardens, and whereas the town received a request from Mike Speller, the co-owner of neighboring property, to purchase a 0.09 acre portion of the Knowing Gardens property, and whereas that the town council held a public hearing per state statute 7-163E for the sale of real property owned by the town on Tuesday, October 2nd, 2018 at 6:30 p.m., and whereas the property proposed for sale was appraised at $11,700, and whereas the town did incur certain other costs, now therefore be it resolved that the town council authorized the sale of 0.09 acres to Michael and Valerie Speller for the price of $12,500, and be it further resolved that the town manager is authorized to sign any necessary documents to effectuate the sale, and be it further resolved that the proceeds of the sale shall be placed in a new fund to be used for the cleanup of nuisance properties.
Thank you. Nuisance properties. Is there a second to that motion?
Nuisance properties.
Monahan. All right, is there any discussion on that? Representative Merritt?
What are the proceeds to be used for? The money for the sale?
We're putting it in a new fund for property cleanup. For instance, nuisance properties. For instance, we're going through a court process right now where we're trying to get approval to, I think this one's an abandoned house, I can't swear to it, but ultimately get court approval so we can come in and clean it up, and then we could tack it on as a lien and recoup. But just so we have some, there's been a lot of interest in cleanup, so we have some money available to do that. We have nothing set aside right now.
Representative Newsom?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Was that property, in the deed of that property say that property can only be used for educational purposes?
No.
When it was deeded to the town?
Our attorneys reviewed all the deeds and paperwork on it. Did it in the abstract and everything else, so.
Why hasn't the town sold any of that property before now?
I can't answer that.
But
It's been discussed.
It has been discussed,
Yeah.
but nobody's sold it because, from what we were told, that the deed says that it was donated to the town for the purpose of education.
I've never heard that one on that property. I've only heard about zoning, so.
It's something to look into, because if that is the case, then selling a piece of property would violate that, and it would also set up a precedent.
I don't think that property has that on the deed, but I'll double check it.
Thank you, sir.
Why did the Planning Commission vote against it? I'm just curious.
Well, it gives the reasons right here. One, that we don't really have a set criteria for selling any of our properties in terms of schools and everything else. But then also it may generate similar requests. So we might sell off more properties. So.
Representative Whitehouse?
Why do they want this property?
Really, they're not going to do anything particular with it. It's a tiny little piece. If you go out there, I don't know if anybody's driven by it, but it's just a little tiny wood lot there. They're maintaining it anyways. They're cleaning it out over the years. The owner, the neighbors there, and they just wanted to kind of complete it. Well, if I'm going to maintain it, so that was their request, and the council was open to that.
Okay, so they've already been putting money and effort into it. They just want to.
Right.
They don't want the town to do something else with it after they're investing in it.
Yeah, make sure it's safe since they, and really if you look, it's on the edge of the driveway in, and it wouldn't be really used for anything anyways, but.
Okay, so it's kind of a natural, because I was looking at the map, it doesn't look like it's naturally, it looks like it should be part of their property.
Yeah, if you look at, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question for the town manager. Would the title search indicate and flag whether it was deeded like that?
It sure should have, but, people are prone to, to make a mistake, so I promise, nothing gets signed until I double check that.
Fine business. Thank you very much.
Representative Bordelon?
I apologize. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I might have missed the part where it said who was on that committee that rejected it. Could you just state who was part of that committee?
Planning Commission.
Yeah, the whole Planning Commission was the...
Right, it was, yeah.
And there were, okay, thank you.
Is that, I had thought I had remembered from Representative Kotowski's liaison report that it had wetlands on it. Is that true or not?
Not on, it's just wooded, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that didn't come into play in their decision at all.
Representative Rogers?
Along those lines, I thought I had read that the Planning Commission had a concern that it might decrease the overall value of the property when going for resale, and I was wondering if there was any research behind that.
I don't believe there's any research to that, no.
Okay, so it's just a hunch. Then. Okay.
Representative Pasqualini?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I had some constituents ask me about the property, and I had to explain to them that I know it was rejected for the sale based on whatever line, and everybody's saying, why don't we sell the property, why don't we do this? The problem is no one has a zoning. They wouldn't allow what we want on the property to bring in tax dollars. So if it all gets sold off in pieces, it gets sold off in pieces, because they're going to decide what's going to go on it, not us. So if we can put it on the tax rolls, piece by piece, we put it on the tax rolls.
Can I just point out one thing?
Yes,
I do want to point out that the Noe Garden Task Force was asked to give input on this, and they did recommend, they were in favor of this.
Representative Newsom?
Just have a quick question. This is a little piece of unusable property, right?
I don't know if I'd say unusable, but it's a little piece, yeah.
On a hill, supposedly, that's adjacent to their home.
Right.
I'm just wondering why you'd spend $12,000 to pay taxes forever on a piece of property that you're already pretty much utilizing because nobody else is doing anything with it.
I have no idea. And I think I mentioned before, we do have a second request for a piece to sell off for the New England Gardens there. It's another small piece. That's actually for a garage, though. They have an intended purpose for this other sale. But
Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, and seeing that it's 10:15, I think we should call for a vote. So this motion that we have on the floor is for the transfer of real property, PIN 260819714055, 0.09 acre portion of Noank Gardens to the Spellers for $12,500. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Fleming. Any abstentions? No. Motion passes.
I will send an
No,
email.
that's true.
Okay. I will send an email out, though, verifying the deed. I'll shoot that out. Okay.
Sorry. So, let's see, sorry. All right, so we're kind of moving on to budget discussions. Representative Katowski?
Per Section 4.5 Power of Initiative of the Town Charter and Rule 9.4 Power of Initiative of the RTM Rules, I am submitting a formal Power of Initiative. Resolution proposing to the Town Council that any increase over 2% in tax increase in the 2020 and future budgets does not come from the taxpayers or fund balance. That any increase in the 2020 budget and future budgets that results in a tax increase in excess of 2% shall be funded through decreasing existing services, salaries, benefits, CIPs, and other applicable line items by the RTM's Power of Initiative. Respectfully submitted, Roseanne Katowski.
Thank you. And I think Representative Katowski indicated she'd like me to have that referred, so I'm going to refer that to the Finance Committee for discussion, and they can come back to us in January with a recommendation. Thank you. All right. So we have some other business. Is there any other business on the floor that people would like to put on the floor? All right, we have a motion to adjourn, and it's been seconded. You can say it. It's not debatable to adjourn, but you can.
Okay.
Quickly.
I would like to refer the letter that Beverly read from Carl Perizzotti, and I would really like to have some understanding about that $5 million.
Okay, well, you can ask me to refer it.
I am asking you.
Okay, I will take that under advisement. Right now, we have a motion on the floor, which is not debatable. That letter, by the way, has been sent to all members, okay? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Me.
Okay. We have,
Just to make sure you heard me.
any abstentions?
Because Roseanne had appointed me, and it was rude for her to cut Roseanne off like that.
Yeah, have a happy solstice and Christmas and everything else. New Year's.
Agenda, which is